Alrighty, sports fans, welcome on in. It is the Sean O'Connell Show here on ESPN 792.1 FM. Proud to be part of Utah's ESPN radio network. I'm Scott Mitchell filling in for Sean for the rest of the week. You have me today, tomorrow, and Friday. So happy to be here. So much to talk about just by way of information. Before we get started, it is no longer April 1st. It's April 2nd now, so everything I say has to be the truth. I cannot lie like I did on my show yesterday. I told a fib, I told a lie, and I promise I will not do that again today. So there you have it.
You lied, Scott?
I did. Oh, it was a good one, too.
Oh, my gosh.
It was a doozy. I had them all up in arms. Yeah, I actually claimed, well, we're going to do a tank race later on the show, right?
Yeah.
So I announced the Jazz lost, and that means they're going to have the worst record they've ever had as a franchise, which is amazing. We're excited about it. They're doing their job. They're losing.
What a weird year.
It's so fun. It's so fun to say that, by the way. I don't know why. It's just I find some morbid enjoyment out of that.
You have to if you don't laugh, you're going to cry if you're
Right.
a Jazz fan.
Yes.
So you got to find a way to find some joy in
And
it.
I go in the bathroom and I cry every morning. I do pray. I pray for Justin Zanuck and kind of for Danny Ainge that they'll make the right choices, because Danny's only 40 hours a week. He's not his normal 80, so he doesn't get as many prayers. But I announced yesterday, I was lying. This is a lie. That Ryan Smith was fed up with the losing, and he agreed to sell the team to Bill Gates and a group out of Washington that was going to relocate the team and rebirth the Seattle Supersonics.
Oh, man.
And in a fit of anger, Gail Miller and the Miller family filed a lawsuit against Ryan Smith because he violated his purchase agreement and took the team out of the state of Utah. And in further news, the U.S. Winter Olympic Committee rescinded the Olympics in 2034
Scott.
because the Sundance Film Festival has left Utah and there's not enough snow.
That's a good April Fool's joke.
That's a pretty
Scott.
good one, right? And I let it hang in the air for just a minute. And how many people freaked out about it? I thought I sold it quite well. And then I said April Fool's. April Fool's to me is my favorite day of the year.
Is it?
Oh, I love it. I love it because you can lie and get away with it. And I love to prey upon the gullible. In those days, I do. Normally, I don't. I try to keep, my life in honest terms. But, April 1st, let's go for it. Okay. Let's see. This opening segment is brought to you by Top Local Roofing. If you need a new roof or repairs, you need our friend Justin Cunningham at Top Local Roofing. They are certified by the Better Business Bureau and work all along the Wasatch Front. Top Local Roofing, 801-839-4501. Oh, man. I have had a frog in my throat for a couple of days, but, we move on. Okay. I got a question for you, James. I had Ronnie Lott on my show, Down and Dirty. So Down and Dirty precedes Sean O'Connell Show. Wow. We're the warm-up act for the Sean O'Connell Show. Anyways, so I had Ronnie Lott. You know who he is, right?
Of course, yeah.
Hall
legend.
of Famer Ronnie Lott. I had
Niners
him on my
legend.
show. And I'm excited, right? Because, I'm talking to Ronnie Lott. And we're having a good conversation. And we're talking about things like the tush push and, what was the Super Bowl that he remembered the most, that meant the most to him. And then he goes, man, I got to go. We're about 15 minutes into this interview. He goes, I got to go. And I'm like, well, wait, you're not supposed to leave. This is my show. You're supposed to stay here until I say, hey, it's been nice. And he goes, man, I got to go. No, I got to go. He goes, Marcus Allen is calling me. I go, well, we'll put Marcus on the phone. We have a three-way conversation here. He said,
Yeah,
no,
Marcus can talk to me too. Yeah.
Yeah, and he goes, no, man, I got to go. And he says, I'm really sorry. And then he hung up. Right in the middle of my interview. And so, what are the odds of that? Like, I just, at first I was like, oh, man, I'm so disappointed because I had so much more I wanted to talk about. And it's like, I got big time for Marcus Allen yesterday.
How'd that make you feel?
Well, I have mixed emotions because I wanted to continue this conversation.
Of course.
And but then it's like, okay, it's Marcus Allen. I mean, if it was someone lesser on the greatness scale,
yeah.
I don't know who would be, then I might be upset by it, but it's Marcus Allen. I mean, so Ronnie Lott played at USC with like a who's who of like former, I believe, let's see, who played. Well, Jeff Fisher was there, who played for the Bears, and then was a great NFL coach. Joey Browner, and who was the other? Dennis Smith. They were roommates at USC. Could you imagine that group of people? And then there was Charles White. Marcus Allen actually was there.
Well, he was there same time Ronnie was?
Same time. And Anthony Munoz.
Oh,
it's just a huge list of like just these great players.
Wow.
And if he'd have said any one of those, maybe Jeff Fisher, I might have said, yeah, he can hold. but the rest of them, like if it was Joe Montana, I would say fine.
Yeah.
Steve Young, that's a rivalry thing.
Yeah.
See, I would be hurt. If it was Steve Young, I would have been hurt.
Don't leave my interview for a BYU guy. Come on now.
Exactly.
On the home of the Utes, Ronnie Lott.
Yeah,
Jeez.
see, I know. I wouldn't do that.
No, that's that's hard. It's hard to feel too slighted when you're big timed by a guy like Marcus Allen.
Right. And
it's like, okay, fine. Dan Patrick, this happened kind of on the Dan Patrick show a few months ago, which you can hear 7 to 10 before the Down and Dirty from
what
10
a lineup.
to 11.
You got Dan Patrick, you got me, and you got Sean O'Connell.
Yeah.
Boy, not a better. And then you got Spence.
And then Spence, outstanding lineup, starting with Dan Patrick's show. But a few months ago, Ross Tucker is an NFL analyst, former offensive lineman that does a great job with his appearances on Dan Patrick's show and the other things that he does. He was bumped for Adam Sandler. So Todd Fritz, the booker, one of the Danettes, Fritzy schedules him for like 9:30, but then Adam Sandler for like 9:45, and Adam's like, I actually have to do 9:30. I got something that came up. So he's like, so they had to switch him. And so Ross Tucker comes on and says, no, I'm not offended at all. That's amazing. You imagine the story I just have? I got
Exactly.
I got bumped for Adam Sandler.
Right. Exactly. I got bumped for Marcus Allen. Okay, I can take that. But I don't know. This whole like cultural thing, I'm not sure how I feel about it. Where it's like a sports show, right? And so you want to talk about sports, and then they bring on all these celebrities, which I find interesting, like the Rich Eisen, I find, all of them. I find them interesting.
He interviews a fair amount of celebrities. Yeah,
so I don't know. Okay, I got to ask this question, and it's a great question. This is one of those questions where I think I think you're. You don't get asked these questions a lot, but it's a real thing. And the question is like, where did I, as a professional athlete, where did I find my edge?
Yeah, we got to credit your guy, our producer,
so Martin,
your producer,
my
Martin
producer,
Kelly.
We were talking
for this question. It is an outstanding question.
We were talking earlier this morning. He said, "Hey, where do you find your edge?" And when you played, and the one question he asked was, so like when you signed at Utah over BYU, did you ever use that as motivation? And I'm like, oh, heck yes.
Only every day, right?
Oh, you have no idea.
Yeah.
So here I grew up in Utah County, related to Lavelle Edwards. Everything in my DNA says I should go to BYU. Like LDS, quarterback, live there, have all these ties. Gifford Nielsen, who's my hero, who, by the way, I'm going to have on Down and Dirty tomorrow. He's he's there. I mean, just you can go on and on. So I don't go there, and so it was my life mission to beat the socks off of BYU. And I mean, everything I did, Like, I was so fired up, and to a point where it was probably not very healthy. and so
hey, sometimes competition isn't very healthy.
No,
let's be honest.
No,
about
and
that.
I have a story I feel really bad about. No, it's like really bad. So I got heavily into recruiting. Like, I was like, I'll host players. I want to talk all these. You can't go to BYU. You got to come here. So I was heavily involved in recruiting. And we had a tight end come to Utah and he was really good. And we were like, man, we got to get this guy. He will fit so nicely into our offense. Well, his name was Chris Smith. And of course, he ends up going to BYU. And he told me on his recruiting trip, he says, I'm coming. He says, I love this. I'm so fired up. This will be amazing. I'm coming. Right? So then he goes off and he goes to BYU.
So he lied to you, not on April Fool's Day.
He lied to me.
Yeah.
That's right.
That's terrible.
And I took it very personally. So my redshirt freshman year, which was his first year at BYU, we play in Provo, and we lose, I think, 21-17, or I don't know what. It was a close game.
Close game.
And I played like I did my freshman year. I played the second half of the games. So we split between two quarterbacks.
And this was, sorry, I wanted, just for context, this was in the middle of one of BYU's long streaks of beating Utah,
this was 1987.
Right?
Yeah. So this was year 10, I think, that they beat us.
Yeah. So
and it was a close game.
Utah just came off of a 9-game win streak. This was when BYU had their long win streak.
It was flipped around. So we'd lose a close game in Provo, and I beeline it after the game for Chris Smith because I'm gonna give him a piece of my mind because I'm ticked off that he did not come to Utah, and so of course I did. I laid into him right on the field, and I was not kind. Like I was, it was the worst time in the week because you're on all of that emotion after a game, so you say really stupid things, and I just let it all out, and I didn't hold back for a moment, and so I was fueled with this just anger, and just determination to beat BYU, like you have no idea, and so the next year, when we do finally win, like it was just the sweetest thing in the world.
You were the starter.
So the next year I'm the starter.
Right?
So this is 1988, and we beat BYU rather soundly. It one of just the funnest games, and it was just so great. Like it was just so great because you work so hard, and you have so many people. I don't think people can really appreciate this. I grew up in Utah County. Like nobody in Utah County at the time liked Utah, and there's a lot of people today that don't. There's more Utah fans in Utah County now, but back then it was like, I mean,
all blue.
I had some coaches and administrators from my high school going, like, that's the dumbest thing in the world you've done that you went to Utah. Like, what is wrong with you? And
do they still say that today?
There's a lot of people that still hate me today
man.
Over the whole thing. And so to win and to kind of get your little amount of revenge and justice was like an awesome, it's an awesome, retribution, whatever. And it's a fun thing that I love to say because as a starter in my whole career at Utah, I never lost to BYU because the first year I didn't start. I came in and played, but I didn't start. Had I started, we probably would have won. Of course we would have won. What am I saying?
You would have destroyed them.
And then my last year, we went back to Provo after we beat them 57, and they scored 70 points on us. Like Lavelle was not merciful. He was also mad, and then that was kind of the beginning of Ty Detmer at BYU. And I didn't play in that game. I was injured. So
okay, I was going to say you said you never lost, but
right,
because you were injured.
I was injured.
If
I was in the game,
you're healthy, you would have scored 90.
We would not have lost, and no one can take that from me. I don't care. They can't. As a starter at Utah, I never lost to BYU.
Who was it Detmer? When did Detmer come in for BYU? Was that
in '88 when we beat them in Salt Lake?
Was his first year?
That was his. So that was his second year in college, but his redshirt freshman year.
Okay, so you came in at the same. You came in at the same time.
He was a year after me.
Okay.
No, it's like I joke with him all the time. It's like had I gone to BYU, I would have won the Heisman Trophy instead of you. And I just asked for the Heisman Trophy on the weekends. Like just special occasions. Just let me wear it for a minute. I don't have to have it all the time.
You just let us show it. Let us just put it on display here in our studio, just for the.
I mean,
weekend.
I'll take a picture of it. Yeah, I don't even have to have the trophy. Just I'll take a picture.
Picture of my trophy.
Yeah,
I love it.
So that was, yes, I was motivated. Like I used that for motivation, and it was massively motivating. But there was a much deeper thing that really motivated me as an athlete that I used to gain my edge. And I love in the movie or the TV show Ted Lasso. And I don't know if you've ever watched the show.
Yeah.
So when they're throwing the darts, right? And he said, I saw this thing. It's like, be curious, not judgmental. And so I used people judging me to my advantage. And here were a few things that I let people think about me. It's like, just go ahead. So the first thing was I was okay if people thought I was nice. And my agent, he asked my roommate my rookie year, he said, do you think Scott will make the team, make the Miami Dolphins? And my roommate, who was also one of his players, said, no, he's too nice.
Oh.
And so, and I am a nice person, right? I think I am. I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely.
But when I played football, I was not nice. Like I was like,
just ask Chris Smith.
Yeah, I'm just telling you, so competitive. And when I went to the NFL, I was just like, I had to go there with this mindset that I was the starting quarterback for the Miami Dolphins, and like nobody was my friend. I mean, I hear so many of these, and I know in my era it was like this. Like I wasn't buddy with a lot of the teams we played against. And now everyone changes jerseys and they do all this stuff. But at the time, for me, I had to just be like, because I knew they were trying to kill me. And so it's like, I can be the nicest person off the field, but on the field, it's like, you are not my friend.
Don't get in my way.
Don't tread on me. And it was a real thing. But what I did is I let people think that. And here was another thing I did that was the same way, is I let people think that I wasn't very smart. And what happens when, I'm just telling you, and it's so true, when people become judgmental of you, they really miss a lot. And I just learned to, and part of it was because I was the youngest of four, and I had three older sisters. So I just sat and watched. I never got a chance to say a word, so it's kind of that thing where you got one mouth and two ears, so you should listen twice as much as you should speak. And I just found a tremendous strength and a tremendous edge in being very observational with people and actually letting them make assumptions. And the assumption is, oh, you're a dumb jock. You don't know you don't know anything. And I just let people think that. And I think one of the greatest strengths I have as a person is my ability to observe situations and analyze them and really see them for what they are. And it was a powerful thing to just let people think that. Now, you look at me, and it was funny. You look at me and you go, well, there's no way that guy could have played quarterback. And I was a big quarterback even when I was a quarterback. In fact, I went to the media days at Utah when it was the Western Athletic Conference. We went to Jackson, Wyoming, and I'm sitting in line at this dinner. They had this dinner, and the head coach for Wyoming is there. He says, now, and we're standing in line together. He starts to talk to me. He says, you're from Utah, right? And I go, yeah. He goes, man, how are you going to like to block for that really nice quarterback, that Mitchell guy they got there? And I kind of looked at him like, I am the Mitchell guy. And he looked at me like, nah, you're lying to me. And I'm like, no, I'm not lying because it's not April 1st. And so he made the appearance. He made the assumption. He made the judgment. Because I was big, I was not athletic. And I let people
had to be an offensive lineman.
Guy right? Can't move in the pocket. He can't escape. And I'm like, believe that. Please. Believe that I'm slow. Believe that I'm unathletic. Believe all of these things, because to me, it gave me a massive, massive advantage. And it was a powerful thing that I just found so fascinating, and I still find it fascinating today. Like, you always have to have the ace up your sleeve. You always have to have your poker face, and you always have to keep people guessing. when I was a high school football coach, the players go, "We can never tell when you're joking with us or you're serious." And I said, "I know." And I go, "That's the way I like it." And I said, "Just know that 90% of the time I'm joking with you." You know, I had
you do have that way about you.
Totally.
I think I've been caught a couple of times. Not sure if you're being serious, but it's like a dry deadpan kind of humor, which is a great quality.
And it served me well. And so using these, like, we're motivated by not being drafted. Believe me, that was a massive motivation for me. And I see these guys and I sympathize. I see guys like Aaron Rodgers and some of these players who were supposed to be picked earlier. They thought they were supposed to be picked earlier. I think unless you're the first pick in the NFL draft, you think you were not picked soon enough. And they've used this for motivation. Tom Brady used it for motivation. And I can tell you it was a massively motivating thing for me in my career to have people doubt you, to have people make judgments about you and not take the time. And so on the flip side of it, in being observational, it's like I don't want to make an assumption, about who this person is. I remember playing in a golf tournament, and there was a, so it's one of those I was the celebrity, and it was a scramble. So I don't know the people. I go show up at the tee box, and there's these four guys, and one of the guys they're talking to, and they're like, how's your game right now? Are you gonna go and try to make the senior PGA Tour? And I look at this guy, he's a little short dude, and I'm like, you guys are. This guy is not that good. Like, no way. No way is that guy that good.
So you got caught making an assumption.
Oh, totally. And so we get up. This guy doesn't miss a shot all day. I think we either birdied or eagled every hole on the golf course. Like, it was insane. And I kid you not. And this guy was amazing. 3 or 4 months later, the golf course by my house is a qualifying event. I go to the tournament, and here's this guy I'd been playing with. And he actually qualified for the senior PGA Tour. But I saw him that morning on the tee, and I go, dude, no, you are no good. So here's my message to everyone: be curious and not judgmental.
Yeah.
And because man, that curiosity is so powerful.
And it's hard to not have that curiosity turn into being judgmental, even in a somewhat innocuous, making assumptions about people that just aren't true. Like, that's somewhat innocuous, but when what you're talking about in competition, that can hurt you, because people who made the assumption about you that you must not be able to move very well in the pocket, you showed them, yeah. I can do that pretty well, actually.
I wanted it to be a secret. I was like, please think that, and you learn these survival techniques in the pocket. Like, these people are seriously trying to hurt you. And so you learn how to ignore it.
And even the best offensive line isn't going to block everybody, right? So you have to be able to be elusive.
I mean, you talk about judging. One of the first things in the NFL that really stood out to me was everyone was good. At every position, you grow up and you say, okay, maybe the offensive linemen aren't quite as athletic as the other guys. In the NFL, no. No. Like, every guy was, you couldn't not be really athletic and play. Especially at the offensive line and defensive line position, because you have to be able to move. Like, you have to be able to move. You have to be athletic, but you also have to be brutally strong. And if you're not, I mean, you'll just not be on the field. And so every position, people were great, and you never made an assumption about anyone like they were not. Now, I will tell you that when I saw Lawrence Taylor for the first time,
what was that like?
I was massively disappointed.
Oh, really?
Oh gosh, yes. I was so disappointed. because I grew up, LT was my guy. I had one photo in my locker. I had one photo of a professional player, and it was LT. And he was on the cover of Sport magazine, and all it was his face inside his helmet. And he had this just this amazing helmet because it had bars everywhere. Like the bars were all over the place. And I'm just like, that's cool. And he's cool. And I remember my rookie year, we went to Giant Stadium, and Richmond Webb was a rookie offensive tackle, and he was going up against LT. And I'm like, Dan Marino is going to get sacked every time he drops back to pass. And all I could do, because I'm on the sidelines, or I'm not playing, all I could do the whole entire game, I couldn't take my eyes off Lawrence Taylor. I'm on the sidelines watching. It's like, there's LT. Like, he is right here. And he didn't sniff Marino all day long. Richmond Webb just owned him. And I was, and here I am. It's my team. You know, my guy's doing a great job, and I'm disappointed.
You're mad that
I'm mad that I'm like, you suck. I hate you. You're not any good. What happened to you? And I mean, LT at that time was like amazing. And it was that you realize that these great players they don't make great plays every time, but they seem to make great plays in the biggest moments, and they make big plays that impact the game. But it's not every time. And so it was kind of a funny thing, you know, where I made this assumption about LT, and it was very wrong.
Yeah. Well, and kind of in an indirect way, you made the assumption about your rookie teammate too, that hey, no way he's going to be able to, no way he's going to be able to block LT, and he actually did a really good job.
Richmond Webb was the rookie of the year in the NFL, and he went up against Lawrence Taylor, Chris Dolman, Reggie White, Bruce Smith, and Richard Dent.
Man,
like his first 5 games in the NFL. Like his first 5 games.
Welcome to the league.
And you know what? He stoned them all. Like I was like Richmond was.
You're like, we got a good lineman here.
He was
a
good
left tackle.
Yeah, he was a good one. He was very good.
It's awesome.
All right, why don't we take a break here for a minute? Let's see. Yeah, let's take a break. Our show today and every day is brought to you by Les Schwab Tires. Les Schwab has the tires, wheels, and accessories for whatever you drive. Stop by your local Les Schwab today, and their professionals will get the job right the first time. Coming up around the corner, we have Belle Frazier, who is a beat writer for the Utah Hockey Club with the Salt Lake Tribune. This is the Sean O'Connell Show here on ESPN 792.1 FM. Hello, sports fans. Welcome back. It is the Sean O'Connell Show here on ESPN 792.1 FM, Utah's #1 sports talk. Hey, we really are, by the way. I'm Scott Mitchell filling in for Sean. I'm the big lefty they bring in when Sean is out of town. So a lot of fun today. Great first segment. Even better one coming up right now. Belle Frazier, Utah Hockey Club beat writer for the Salt Lake Tribune, joins us after an amazing win last night. Belle, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Oh, I'm living the dream. Living the dream. And it's not a nightmare. That's a good thing. It's a dream that's not a nightmare. Anyways, so the Utah Hockey Club has a nice win against the Flames last night. What stood out to you most about this game?
I think the way they stuck with it. We talked to Barrett Hayton after the game, and Utah went up 2-0 at the beginning of the second period, and then the Flames came and cut their lead in half and made it 2-1 at the 13-minute mark of the second period. But they didn't get on their heels because the Flames made a push. They've had an issue sometimes of coming into the third period and seeing how the opponent's going to react and what kind of attack they're going to make. But instead, Utah stuck to their game, played well defensively, and then Clayton Keller gets rewarded with that empty net goal at the end to seal the 3-1 win. But I think the main storyline from this one, once again, I feel like we say it almost every game now, was Karel Vejmelka. He made 33 saves on 34 shots in his 18th consecutive start, which is the most of any goaltender since 2019. So you would expect him to be tired, worn out by now, but they've kept rolling with him. And last night he kind of showed up and proved everyone wrong that he needed a break. So we'll see if that sticks, but he was definitely one of their top stars last night, supplemented with a mature shutdown game from the rest of the team.
Right, and there was some conversation about, that this isn't just about right now, but this actually staying in and having this long streak of playing is actually something that the Utah Hockey Club believes will be beneficial in the future.
Yeah, we talked to head coach Andre Torini yesterday, and he opened the morning press conference with that message where he said this is not just for this season. They've had doubts about Vejmelka in the past, and what they knew about him in Arizona was that once he played too many games in a row, he would get tired and his game would fall off. So Andre said last night that it's been really important for them to learn that he can push through that fatigue and find another level to his game this season, especially since Utah signed him to a 5-year extension in March. So I think for them, obviously they're going with him right now because they believe they still have, a small chance to make the playoffs, and they're going to go with their best guy. But they also want to battle test him. If they make a run eventually in the playoffs, he will likely start every, if not 99%, 98% of the games, and that's going to have to be 20, 24 games if they really want to make a dent. So I think for them looking ahead, it's good to know that Vejmelka can take this type of endurance and still play to the best of his ability. Obviously, he got pulled in that 8-0 Tampa game and that 7-1 Edmonton game, which were just full team collapses. But yeah, I think it's just good information for the team to have good confidence in that contract and in him in the future. But the other thing is they don't really have any other option right now. So they've kind of been forced into this corner with Vejmelka, but it's had good returns. So you can't be that mad about it.
8 points and 7 games to the playoffs. Is there a realistic path to get there?
Realistic? No.
What?
Utah would have to win every single one of the rest of its regular season games, and they would need the St. Louis Blues, who have won 10 straight, to lose, I believe, 4 of the next 6 or 7. So there's a chance. It's not 0%, and that's what these guys are keeping their mindset on. They believe that they can make a push, and personally, journalists aside, analysis aside, that's the best part of sports, believing in miracles, believing your team can pull it off. So it's not 0%, but Utah needs some help. They're not just going to get in by winning the rest of their games.
Right.
They need the other teams in the Western Conference around them to lose, and that's the hardest part at this part of the season is you can control what you can control on the ice, but Utah's in the position where they will not make it in unless the teams they're chasing kind of hit a rut right now, and those teams have been pretty hot. So Utah can win and do whatever it wants, but it will come down to kind of the failure of those around them.
How much of an impact is home ice? Does it matter? Is it 1 goal, 2 goal? What's the impact of actually the home ice?
I think it definitely matters, and the players always say that. It was a tough stretch in the beginning of the season. They weren't getting the results they wanted on home ice, even if they were strong games and they were lost by 1 goal or 2 goal and they weren't blowouts. They had a streak where they hadn't won on home ice for over a month, I believe, and it was starting to be a theme. They were the team with the least amount of wins on home ice in the NHL early on, and that really took a turn in the second half of the season. They won in their last, I think, 4 out of 6 at home. So it's really started to be home ice advantage for them. And that's something that the whole team has talked about all season, where the fans have showed up for them since day one when they landed in Utah. And it was really frustrating that they couldn't kind of return the favor with wins. So that's been a really big emphasis for them, just wanting to give these new fans in this new market a good experience, a fun experience to keep coming back to. And they've been able to do that. And Demelka talks about it. Sergachev talks about it. Barrett Hayton talked about it last night. Hearing the crowd and kind of their commitment to the team, no matter where they are in the standings, really keeps these guys going. So I think it's been huge for them, and they're on their last homestand of the regular season. They have 4 games left at Delta Center this year, which is kind of crazy to think about. They finished the regular season on the road. So, yeah, these next 4 nights at Delta Center, I'm sure will be loud as fans kind of see the team possibly for the last time before next season.
So there's a sense that this move to Salt Lake from Phoenix has been a real positive one. It seems like the players and the organization are really embracing the community. Ryan Smith just announced a partnership with entrepreneurs and local communities to actually chip in and donate $500,000 to the first 20 hockey rinks that are built here in the state of Utah. What kind of impact does that have as far as the team? Like, is it a feeder program? Is it just getting excitement? What kind of impact is having this kind of commitment to hockey around the state of Utah have on the club?
It's huge, and we'll have more information on that in the coming weeks. That was kind of the preliminary plans that Ryan tweeted out, but we'll definitely have stories on that this summer as that construction gets undergoing. But it's really big. I think a lot of the players, specifically, you look at a guy like Clayton Keller, who grew up around St. Louis. It wasn't a huge place for youth hockey, and a lot of the old Blues players stuck around and lived there and created programs for the kids. And in Clayton Keller's draft year, I think 6 kids out of that St. Louis program were drafted in the first round, or 5 of them, including Matthew Tkachuk. So I think it just, like you said, a breeding ground. It makes room for Utah kids to be the next NHL stars, and obviously it's going to take years and years, but that's what a lot of these guys are excited about, that they're going to be the role models for kids who won't remember Utah not having a hockey team, and that they see kids in their jerseys. Dylan Gunther and Logan Cooley, they're 20 and 21 years old, and Logan Cooley learned how to skate in a Learn to Skate program with the Pittsburgh Penguins. So these are all guys who have benefited from local, community-driven hockey in their own hometowns. And I think it's really cool for them to kind of be those faces and the force behind people wanting to be at rinks. Michael Carcone has 2 young boys, and he was saying the other month that he was taking them to skate, and the rinks were, overflowing with people who wanted to get involved. So I think it's an early return for what this team and the impact has been, but just to see that there literally is not enough ice space for the amount of people that want to get involved, I think is a really big positive. And Utah, yes, the NHL team helped for it to be a hockey state and Salt Lake City to be a hockey city, but I think it's the grassroots stuff that will really make a difference. And, kudos to SCG for making that a priority and not just focusing on the pro level.
As I asked you that question and as you were answering it, I realized something I don't think anyone's really mentioned, but it has happened here in other sports in the state of Utah. So you have these players that play collegiately in football, and they leave, they go to the NFL and they play, and then they come back. And so many of these players have come back and at whatever level of success they had in the NFL, and they've come back to the community, and they've started this whole grassroots thing that you've talked about training players and about camps and about, coaching. And if you watch high school football in the state of Utah, the level of coaching, every program in the country recruits in Utah. and Utah is now producing a lot of really good NFL players. And I think to what you just said, it's been those grassroots. It's been a lot of players coming back. I mean, they have the all poly camp here, which is a huge thing, and so it does have an impact. You know, I guess I could have answered my own question, but I've seen it in other sports, and you get this thing going, and you'll see a lot of production from what happens with this. So I think it's a very cool thing, and I'm a huge hockey fan. I'm an NFL football guy, but man, I love hockey. I love what Ryan Smith's doing. Okay, this is going to be a tough question for you. Are you ready for it? This might be the hardest question I'm going to ask you today. Are you sitting down?
I am.
Okay. Well, you better stand up. No, I'm kidding. All right. Who gets a championship first, the Utah Jazz or the Utah Hockey Club?
I would say Utah Hockey Club.
Okay. Do tell.
Cautiously say Utah Hockey Club. I just think the places they're in are different. Obviously, both are, as of right now, out of a playoff picture, but Utah Hockey Club is kind of coming out of a rebuild. They're seeing the draft picks that they piled up years ago kind of turn out when you look at Logan Cooley and Dylan Gunther, like we just talked about. So I think they're on an upward trajectory where Bill Armstrong, obviously the team used to be the Arizona Coyotes and now they're in Utah, but he came in 2020 and started that rebuild. And now we're in 2025 and you're kind of seeing the progress. You know, they had their best regular season record since the rebuild started, since 2018, actually, I believe. Arizona Coyotes had 77 points last year and Utah Hockey Club just passed that. Yes, they're different teams, but, you know, it's technically the same players. And those are the progression points you want to see. So I think also with the cap space Utah has this summer, they'll be able to hopefully bring in some big free agents or at least trade for, fortified goal scorers or more depth in their forward group that'll make them more of a contender. So I just think in terms of timeline, they are on the come up and they're a bit ahead because they've gone through the dark days that the Jazz are kind of going through now. But what I'll also say is I personally think Stanley Cup is the hardest championship to win in professional sports. So you could think an NHL team is going to win a Stanley Cup and they could lose in the first or second round. Like Tampa Bay Lightning got swept by the Columbus Blue Jackets before they won 2 straight cups. So it's kind of hard to predict, but just in terms of timeline, I would say Utah Hockey Club, but things cannot pan out and you never know. I think that's a hard thing to predict, but
I like your prediction. I hope they both win, but I like it. You sold me. I think they're going to do it. All right, Belle, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. Great stuff.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
All right, there you have it. Belle Frazier, Utah Hockey Club beat writer for the Salt Lake Tribune. Check out your bracket in our $1 Million Bracket Challenge. A perfect bracket wins you $1 million. Go to ESPN700sports.com and click on the $1 Million Bracket Challenge. Post at the top of the homepage to keep track on your picks. ESPN 792.1 FM $1 Million Bracket Challenge is brought to you by Motorsportsland, Jersey Mike's, the Intermountain Sportsman's Expo, Intermountain Bobcat, and Ken Garff Nissan of Salt Lake City. Hey, coming up around the corner, Carly Dockendorf, Red Rocks coach, gymnastics, has the regionals here this weekend. That's a lot of exciting. They've only been to the national championship 48 straight times. Let's see if they can make it 49. This is the Sean O'Connell Show here on ESPN 792.1 FM. All righty, sports fans, welcome back. It is the Sean O'Connell Show here on ESPN 792.1 FM, Utah's #1 sports talk. I'm Scott Mitchell, filling in for Sean O'Connell today, tomorrow, and the next day, and forever and ever. No, just the next 3 days. So, anyways, thanks for joining in. Fun show so far. A lot of cool stuff. Nothing cooler right now than the Utah Red Rocks. They're headed to the regionals, which start tomorrow. And on Saturday, they are hosting, and we have the coach, Carly Dockendorf, joining us right now. Carly, how you doing? Welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you. So excited to be here.
Yes, very cool stuff. So this is your first season in the Big 12. What are your impressions so far with how things went?
It is, yeah. No, we've really been loving being a part of the Big 12. We had the Big 12 championships over at the Maverick Center a few weeks ago, and came away with our first championship trophy, and couldn't be more excited to bring that home for our first time in the Big 12.
And of course, you're the first Utah athletic program to win a conference championship since joining the conference last fall. That happened also when Utah joined the Pac-12. So maybe that's a precursor or a good omen for our conference. How does it feel?
So.
I mean, how does it feel? Like, I'm trying to wrap my head around this. Like, 48 straight national championships that you have gone to. How do you keep doing it year after year after year after year and not get bored or get burned out?
Yeah, no pressure at all, right? Just super easy, no expectations.
Well, yeah, come on.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, when, athletes commit to coming here, they know they're signing up for that expectation that we don't miss a nationals. We qualify every single year, and that tradition of excellence has just, been enrooted in the program here. And I think it's a privilege. I think we really feel like it's an honor to be a part of a program with that level of expectation. And what a cool stat, just not only just in gymnastics, but any NCAA sports team, period, to be able to qualify to all national championships. So really excited to be home this year as we go for 49.
Yeah, and I tip my hat to you. I was a student at Utah back in the 1980s, and we went to every meet, and it was electric. The Huntsman Center back then, it's still that way today. You mentioned hosting the regional at the Huntsman Center. What does it mean to have that and to be hosting that at your home venue?
I mean, it's amazing for us to be able to be in our own arena for, the regional championships, to have our own fans. I mean, that's just such an advantage for us. They bring so much energy to our team, so much excitement. Our athletes love competing in front of them. So that's huge for us. And then to have our own equipment, and to be able to just be in the space that we're so comfortable being in, it's massive for us.
Does that kind of impact? I mean, you mentioned your own equipment. When you go to another place, you don't bring your own equipment. Do they provide it for you? And
yeah, no, we just have to adjust to the equipment that's there in a different arena. But typically the past few years we've competed in venues where we've been there lots of times, so we're familiar with it. But I mean, last year we had to travel all the way across the country to Florida, and never been in the arena. So it was all new. And, part of being a great team is being able to adapt and adjust, because that's what everyone's going to have to do to move forward.
Yeah. Speaking of adjusting, how does your preparation change from like the regular season and then going into the regionals and then the nationals?
Yeah, it definitely becomes more detail oriented and, a little bit scaled back on how much we're practicing, because at this point, they know how to do their gymnastics. So it really is about keeping them, healthy, number one, hungry, determined to go for it, and then happy. I mean, they've got to be happy. They've got to be excited. And so those are kind of our three main things that we focus on right now. And just dialing in on the details and keeping everyone's confidence up and excited to go compete.
I remember Dr. Keith Henshin was a sports psychologist who worked extensively with athletics and the gymnastics specifically. How much has that changed over the years? Do you do more of that when you talk about keeping people happy and kind of focused and in the right frame of mind. Do you have more involvement with sports psychologists? Is there someone with the program all the time? Do you spend where have you landed on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think Keith Henshaw, working with Greg Marsden and the Red Rocks they were kind of the pioneers at that time of bringing that element into the sport. And I think that really, from the stories that I've heard, it really elevated and put Utah gymnastics in the forefront for how they were able to compete under the biggest meets. And so, yeah, it definitely is an important part of our sport. And I think that every program utilizes it a little bit different. For us, it's something we really do spend a lot of time on. You have to be able to compete in front of 15,000 fans here if you're gonna be a Red Rock. So being able to handle that pressure, and then of course the pressure of qualifying to nationals every year, the mind is going to do a lot of controlling of how that happens.
I would imagine that's kind of a cool thing to see as a coach, like to see the mindset and the toughness of it, and the focus and the ability to perform at a high level with so much on the line. I would imagine that's got to be a satisfying thing as a coach.
Yeah, I mean, I think sometimes it's an untapped space that these athletes have ever practiced before. A lot of them from the club, the club world, they just do gymnastics, but they don't spend time on the mental performance or like even the sports performance, like the strength training to the same extent that we do here. But as they are able to add some of those resources in, you really see their gymnastics just continue to grow and elevate. What
makes this year's team so great?
I think one thing about this team that just makes them so special is they've really embraced this idea of being Team 50. This is 50 years of Utah gymnastics.
Wow.
And we talked a lot about what it means to be a part of a legacy program. And just kind of like honoring, all the people, all the women and the coaches, staff that came before us to make it possible for us to still be one of the best teams in the country. We didn't just land upon it. I mean, it was built 50 years ago and, year after year after year. And really about leaving, as we say it, the leotard better than we found it. And I think they've really taken that to heart this year.
Awesome.
And have come together and are so close, and they really care about each other as people at the end of the day. And I think when we get to nationals, that's what really counts, is about the love and care for one another and the belief in the sisterhood and this program and, doing it for themselves and for this community of Utah fans.
Well, it's truly impressive. And my hat goes off to you. Always been a fan, always been impressed with what goes on there, and I think you're just doing an amazing job. You guys are tomorrow night, right, at 7 p.m.?
Yep. For us, our first competition is tomorrow night at 7 p.m.
Awesome. You don't want to miss this. The Red Rocks NCAA Regionals Thursday and Saturday. So really excited. Good luck to you, and thanks for joining.
Thank you so much. Go Utes.
Go Utes. All right, there you have it. Carly Dockendorf, the Red Rocks head coach. Man, they're so good. I'm telling you, I hope people can appreciate how amazing they are and what they've done consistently, just so impressive. So, and they've kept it going up forever.
And Scott, we talk about blue bloods all the time in college sports.
Yeah.
It's amazing that we have a blue blood in a college sport right here in Salt Lake City. And one of the bluest of blue. I mean, Utah's red, right? But it's as far as blue bloods go in college gymnastics, maybe the bluest of the blue bloods here in Utah, here in Salt Lake City. So, and you get to see them in not the highest level of NCAA competition, but the second highest in the regional level.
There, just right.
Yeah.
There.
At the Huntsman Center.
I'm sure.
I believe
Utah, it'll be rocking.
I believe UtahTickets.com is where you can get tickets tomorrow night at 7, as you said, Scott. And then if they advance, which they always do, right? We don't take that for granted, but they still have to earn it. Yeah. But they will be in action again Saturday night.
I would think
at the Huntsman Center.
Yeah. Anyways, I'm sure the place will be rocking. I'm sure that it will be sold out. So good for the Red Rocks and good for Coach Dockendorf and her program. All right, let's take a break. Come back at the top of the hour. We got Ryan Fowler, NFL draft analyst for the Draft Network, will join us. This is Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 792.1 FM. Hello, sports fans. Welcome back to the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 792.1 FM. Proud to be a part of Utah's ESPN radio network. I'm Scott Mitchell, filling in for Sean O'Connell. Really appreciate you joining the show. Having a lot of fun today. Going to have some more fun. Lots of fun. It's always fun. By the way, if you want to stream us, you just listen live on ESPN700sports.com, the ESPN 700 app, or your smart speaker. Just tell it to play ESPN 700. And, of course, ESPN 700 Sports Utah on YouTube. We're everywhere. And you can get us on the podcast on the ESPN700sports.com or on the ESPN 700 app. So just search for the Sean O'Connell Show, and you'll find it, among other things. So anyway, so good to be here. So glad to have our next guest because a very big, important event is coming up in the NFL. That's called the draft. Ryan Fowler, an NFL draft analyst for the Draft Network, joins us right now. Ryan, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Appreciate you having me on.
I'm glad you're doing well, and I'm glad you're on. Okay. Yesterday was April Fool's, and it's the day everyone gets to lie, and it's okay. Unless you're a politician, then you get to lie all the time. In fact, maybe it's the only day that politicians actually tell the truth is on April 1st. I don't know, but they lie all the time. So how much false information is out there leading into the draft? Like who's telling tales? Who's trying to manipulate the narrative here? What do you know?
Yeah, there's a lot this time of year, especially I'll say this in this class where, I've been in this thing, the draft space since 2018, prior to my days with the Washington Commanders. And, I can't remember going into a draft where there's been so much up in the air, really, once you get past the blue chippers in this class, where you expect Cam Ward, Abdul Carter, Travis Hunter, Mason Graham, those guys to go in the top 5-6 picks. So right now where we are on April 2nd, we still got a little over 3 weeks till this thing kicks off in Green Bay on night one. Now, a lot of it is, what is smoke? What is actually fire? And deciphering that has been something that I know teams and scouts across the league have been trying to figure out here really since the early parts of this process, all the way back into, October and November, when boards were really starting to place themselves across all 32 teams. So there's a lot of it going on right now, but I'll say even more so in this year's class, just because things are so far up in the air. And if there's anybody that says, there's a consensus as far as where teams are going to go on night one and where guys are going to hear their names called, I promise they're lying to you, because there is really no consensus in this class.
So Cam Ward is not necessarily the number one pick in the draft then?
I think so. With Cam and Abdul, I would say if there's anything, I would say that's probably a trend that is likely. But again, I would not be shocked something different happens on draft night.
The running back position seems to be a deep one in this draft. Am I reading that right? And what is that signaling about running backs and maybe Saquon Barkley? Is that a position that's returning to some prominence in the NFL again?
Yes, it's absolutely loaded. I think you can make a case along with the, whether it's the D-line group, interior guys, or the edge guys, that it's the deepest group in this class, and also one of the more historic groups that we've seen really in the last 5 to 10 years. I mean, there's upwards of 25 guys that may hear their names called on all 3 days of this draft. And that's going to start with Boise State's Ashton Genty. Likely either he's going to be a Las Vegas Raider at 6, or if he gets past there, likely the Chicago Bears will scoop him up at 10. So we'll see what happens there. But with teams now in the NFL where last few years, with the Patrick Mahomeses of the world and Josh Allen and Joe Burrow, you live with 2 high safeties and try to counter the air. But now you're trying to also stop the run. And you're looking at teams like the Eagles, of course. You mentioned Saquon Barkley. You look up the Lions with Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. You got to be able to run the football too. So with so many good players in this class, Genty's a headliner. Amari and Hampton I absolutely love from North Carolina as well. I have a first-round grade on him. And then you can get into even the late day 2, early portions of day 3 bucket where there's different body types. Damian Martinez from Miami, or Cam Skattebo from Arizona State, or even Molly Gordon from Oklahoma State. Those guys are heavier ball carriers. And then there's your lighter scat backs with your Jaden Blue from Texas, Bashal Tootin as well from Virginia Tech. So there's so many guys in this class we could sit here and talk about all day long. But the running back is absolutely back, and it's a good year to need one, absolutely.
And I know Emmitt Smith will be able to sleep well now because he's been all bent out of shape that running backs are not getting any respect. So I'm glad for Emmitt Smith. All right, what player or players are people not talking about that they should be?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think there's a couple guys, really one off the top of my head. It's Femi Oladejo. from UCLA. This is a young man that started his career at off-ball linebacker for the UCLA Bruins, made the transition down to edge this year, went to the Senior Bowl and dominated. And I've had a privilege of getting to know Femi during this process very intently. And he is someone that, bottom line, you want in your locker room right away to not only lead with his play on the field, but also be a guy in that locker room to build a culture somewhere. Now, do I think he goes in the top 20 picks? No, I would say that's probably a little bit rich right now. But as we get back to the 25, the 28, 29, would not be shocked to see Femi Oladejo, who's 6'4", 260 pounds, just an extremely impressive young man that even at the Senior Bowl, watching him up close, where he's calling out calls to guys on the field, off the field, what teams are running, he's decreased that depth now going from linebacker to edge, seeing things now closer, and he's just an outstanding football player. And I would even stay at that edge group a little bit and talk about Ashton Gelati from Louisville at 275 pounds, likely in that third round, fourth round type of bucket, where you have to have some power to your game in today's NFL, to where I love guys that can come in at 240 pounds and have that finesse, speed type of aspect to their game. But can you win with power? Can you align at different spots up front? And what's your production like? And Ashton was sensational the last few years at Louisville. So Ashton Gelati from Louisville, an edge player. Femi Oladejo from UCLA along the edge as well. Really two guys, I think, right away. You're really top of my head as far as guys that need some more attention.
You're starting to hear Jackson Dart's name as a potential first-round player. That's kind of been a recent development. What are your thoughts on Jackson Dart?
Yeah, I think he's got all the tools in the world, that you want. There's a reason why he was a big-time recruit coming out of high school. The guy's not even 22 years old yet, 6'2", 225. He's got some ability outside of structure. But I think for me, at least in evaluating the quarterback position, first off, your fundamentals, your ability to come in and lead a huddle, and also understand what the hell you're looking at, pre-snap, and then executing post-snap. And I think looking at what Jackson Dart did, where the surroundings were pretty good at Ole Miss last year, but I think there were times, even looking at the bowl game against Duke, to where if he potentially is going to be a franchise guy, can you elevate those around you? And I think Jackson Dart did that a lot at times at Ole Miss, and even saw it in spurts at the Senior Bowl. Now, I am not someone that is in support of getting Jackson in the first round, but in that second to third round bucket, it really is that unicorn type of bucket where you don't really see it a ton with quarterbacks come off in the second, third round. I think he's probably comfortable in that bucket, and I think if there's one team to watch, if Jackson gets into that 25-30 range and still on the board, keep an eye on the New Orleans Saints as far as a team to make a move on late on day one.
Okay. I like that. And he's been down in Mississippi, kind of in that same part of the country.
Yes.
The owners' meeting are going on right now. Is there any news, anything coming out of the owners' meetings that might impact the draft?
As of right now, nothing as far as, anything affecting the draft. I know one topic of conversation has been, just where the draft's going to be in the future. I know something that I heard from one of the sources this week as far as just there's a lot of questions surrounding Green Bay this year logistically, the airports,
right,
the hotels in the area. There's a lot of logistical issues, and not a lot of players are even showing up this year. And heck, you look at the last few years with Detroit and Kansas City. Now, it's no flack to those cities, but it's not a Las Vegas. It's not a New York. It's not a Miami, that has these resources. So that's really one of the conversations, but nothing really notable.
Yeah, they'll take them all walleye fishing on some lake is what they're going to do. Go to Green.
Right.
I know when. So I played for the Detroit Lions, and it was the same thing when you played. You couldn't stay in Green Bay. You had to stay in Appleton. That was it was 45 minutes away or whatever. But I mean, I still think it's cool though that the draft is in Green Bay because it's such an iconic place. But I could totally see the logistic problems that are there.
Agree.
Jim Haslam, the owner of the Cleveland Browns, said they took a swing and a huge whiff at Deshaun Watson. Where are they? I guess it's, I don't know. To me, I took it as a bit of a surprise that he would actually admit that publicly. But what does that mean for the Cleveland Browns and where they are in the draft this year?
Yeah, it's so unfortunate. From the grand scheme of things, you want to see guys or teams and organizations at some point. There's there's revolutions with all these teams, right? There's teams that are good, teams that are bad. I mean, people forget how bad the Patriots were, right, before the legacy of Brady and Belichick, or even how bad the Chiefs were for some time. And, you know, how good even Washington was before they obviously last year, and how good they were with Joe Gibbs and Doug Williams and all those guys. But I think with Cleveland, they've just been so bad for so long. And when you look at Deshaun Watson's contract, for me personally, I don't know, not just in NFL history, but in sports in general, in history, how bad that contract has been for them. And Haslam said, and I am glad he said it, because it has been a complete whiff. And it set them back, you know, probably 4 to 6 years. And where they are at 2 overall, you know, are they just going to sell themselves on likely Shedeur Sanders, you know, from Colorado to be their face of the franchise? I'm not sure that happens. Do they just take Abdul Carter and really have one of the best defenses in football with he and Myles Garrett and the young secondary they have? That's a very, very high possibility. So I think it's unfortunate as far as what the situation happened, but, you know, I'm obviously not going to get into it a ton, but as far as the individual, right, behind the scenes and who Deshaun Watson is and seeing him fail, I know a lot of people out there that are honestly probably positive and good that he's failing, unfortunately, because of the kind of human that he is and a lot of situations that have gone on behind the scenes. So they've really set themselves back really 4 to 6 years in an organization that has been just so bad for a long, long time.
Yeah, that's just a gut punch for sure. I mean, and I actually liked Deshaun at Clemson. I liked him with the Houston Texans. I thought it was going to be a good move, but clearly things just unraveled dramatically there. Speaking of Shedeur, so Shedeur is fascinating to me. And he's fascinating because I've heard just so many things about Shedeur. You know, that he's a high draft pick, that he's maybe not even a first-round draft pick. You saw, of course, Coach Prime, his dad, who said, you know, we might be doing an Eli move in the draft, and now he's saying, you know, I'm okay wherever Shedeur goes. You know, I think you know, he'll be great wherever he goes. And so there's kind of a walk back maybe on his. And as I've thought about this, is Shedeur hard to really analyze because people have a hard time removing his dad from the equation, in that, you know, he's got that blood in him, and is he going to be that type of player? And is it hard to separate those two?
It's a great question. It really is, you know, and I think that's the biggest part of it, not just for coaches that are going to be coaching them, but the GMs, you know, turning in his draft card. And I think for me, the player is a second-round player for me. I don't personally have him in the first-round bucket. I have him in the 20 to 30 range in this draft, and I think Pittsburgh is a great spot for him there in the early 20s. But I think he still will go higher than that. But I think overall, when you look at the talent, I love the confidence that he plays with. I know that may rub some people the wrong way, but, you know, you need a face of the franchise to have a little bit of a little swagger to him, a little confidence to lead a huddle a little bit. And if you're going to a big market, whether that be like in New York, you're going to need that a little bit. But I think overall, you know, the arm strength lacks, the pocket maneuverability lacks for me. Just the internal clock is so extended. But however, you know, he takes care of the football, and it was nice throwing to 3-4 NFL receivers that he had this year out there in Colorado away from Travis Hunter. But, you know, he's also tough as nails, and I think you're going to need that, of course, at the NFL level. As you know, the ability just to be tough, you know, get up, take a hit, and it's not going to be perfect, as we saw him with Chicago last year with Caleb Williams taking 68 sacks. So I like Shedeur. I don't love him. You know, just because I have him in the second-round bucket doesn't mean I don't like the player, but for me, I'm not there yet as far as, hey, I can look at Shedeur Sanders in the Cam Ward type of bucket and say that's a franchise changer, or even put him in the same category like we saw last year with so many guys go in the top 12 picks.
Yeah, you know, so I'm the color analyst for Utah football, have been for the last 8 years. So I've watched Caleb Williams, I watched Bo Nix and Michael Penix and some of these really good quarterbacks in the Pac-12, and to watch Shedeur. And it's interesting what you've just said, because that's – and I played quarterback in the NFL for 12 years. So I say you're on point with your analysis of what you've seen with Shedeur, just from my viewing him and actually interviewing him. I mean, I got to interview him a couple times in the media days. And so I think you're on point. And so to me, it's just so fascinating to see, because, you know, Dion can sell ice to Eskimos, you know, and so he's got that just crazy, just charismatic personality that, and so I think it's hard to separate it out. So what teams are lurking, right? And there's always a dumb team in the draft, and maybe there's multiple ones. But what team is lurking this year that's going to make a dumb move? They're going to reach for a player, and everybody's going to be scratching their head.
Yeah, I think that's a great man. I think there's a couple teams. I mentioned the Saints as far as trying to make a move. I think the Miami Dolphins are really an interesting organization considering where they are with Tua Tagovailoa. I don't know what the future is down there with him. I really don't. I think when you look inside the top 10 picks, Carolina is very interesting at 8. You could just say they're going to take a pass rusher, take a Jalen Walker from Georgia and go from there. The Jets can go a multitude of routes as well. But I'm really, really interested to see what the New England Patriots do at 4. Because there's a lot of buzz with them at tackle with the Will Campbell from LSU or Armand Membu from Missouri. Or is it just as simple as, we're now sitting here at 4 and we weren't expecting maybe even a Mason Graham to be here, or we weren't expecting Travis Hunter to be here at the end of the day. And we just added, Stephon Diggs on offense, and, maybe we need another corner on the outside. So I think the New England Patriots are a very interesting team. I don't think they're going to make a dumb move, but I think with Mike Vrabel now in the building to where he's just going to get his guy no matter what round that is, they're a really interesting spot at 4 to where the 3 teams in front of them, where there's cornerback needs, there's needs on either side of the ball, beyond the position. They're an interesting spot at 4, and even you could say Jacksonville at 5 as well, which is a team that absolutely has to meet expectations this year. There's going to be even some more changes made there.
Yeah, it's going to be fun to watch that. Is there a team in this draft that maybe they don't have the highest draft pick, but they're really positioned through the draft? They've got a lot of draft picks. They could that a team could really have a huge impact on the draft. You look at what happened to Philadelphia last year in their draft and the impact it had on the team. Is there a team like that could really benefit from this draft?
Yeah, for those listening out there that know my background, with me with Washington, I think would be a bias to say a little bit of the Washington Commanders, but they don't have a ton of capital. They got 4 or 5 picks right now in this thing, and they've traded them away with Deebo Samuel, Laramie Tunsil. So those are great additions, and I think it'd be easy to say Washington as far as what they did. But I think if there's one team with so much capital, I think it's at 11 with the San Francisco 49ers. There's talent still in the building, but on either side of the ball. And with as many picks as they have, I think they have 10 or 11 right now in John Lynch's back pocket. And they understand how to evaluate talent. And they've really done a nice job of adding those types of players over the last, 3, 4, 5 seasons. So, I think at 11, the Niners, I think you can look at even Buffalo in the back end as well. I'm interested to see what the Bears do as far as their additions up front in free agency. So there's one team, again, the San Francisco 49ers have a lot of nice capital in all 3 days in a class that, again, is top-heavy, as I mentioned earlier, but has a lot of nice depth to find rotational pieces on either side of the ball as you get into the later rounds.
This stuff, I could talk to you about this all day. So interesting what's happening and what's going to happen. Is there a team out there who actually does a really good job of late-round picks? Or does that vary from year to year? Or is there just a team out there that goes, and they're really good at value picking later in the later rounds?
Yeah, I think when you look at Buffalo over the last few years, grabbing guys, the Christian Benfords of the world, those types of players from small schools as well, identifying those players. I think the Rams have done a decent job. Look at Kobe Turner from Wake Forest. And he wasn't a late-round guy, but a guy that was really underrated in the process. And I think if you look at even the Rams, I mentioned the Rams, but I think if you maybe look at a team, Green Bay's done a decent job of adding some defensive talent in years past in the 4th, 5th, 6th rounds. I think Baltimore's done a decent job. Detroit's done a decent job as well. So yeah. I don't think there's really one team that pops out of my head. I really like the addition a couple of years ago that Minnesota made in the UDFA bucket with Ivan Pace Jr. There was no reason for him to be undrafted from Cincinnati, where I know he was undersized. I know the length didn't match typical thresholds and all those types of things, but I think there has to be an appreciation that goes underlooked every single year. Can you play football? Are you a good football player or not in a world where analytics are so talked about? And I think Ivan Pace and what he's become as an undrafted player for the Minnesota Vikings, or as a starter in the middle of their defense, that's one player that's really popped out to me the last 2 years.
Yeah, I love the NFL draft for that reason, that there's so many great stories of great players, all-timers, who are late round draft. I know my draft year in 1990, John Randall, is a Hall of Famer. He wasn't even in 12 rounds. He wasn't, and ends up having a Hall of Fame career. So I love those late round picks. I love the teams that are just really savvy and smart when they do that stuff. All right, I'm going to test you, Ryan. You ready for this? I'm going to throw out a name for you, and I'm telling you, I know this guy can play. I know he can play. And I don't think a lot of people are talking about him, and he could be one of those free agents, possibly a late round draft choice. Caleb Lohner. Caleb Lohner played at Utah last year. He's a basketball player, and he barely played last year. Do you know anything about Caleb Lohner?
Yes, I know Texas kid, 6'6", whatever he is. I know you mentioned basketball. Yes, I do know Caleb. I remember talking with him, I think last week's show on here. Kid that transferred in from Baylor, as you mentioned.
Yes.
I do know a little bit. I know the attention right at Utah has been around Dalton Kincaid. I even like Brant Keithy. I still think he can play. Oh. But a guy with that size and that frame, we've seen it in years past to where you look at the Logan Thomases of the world, where he was at Arizona as a quarterback, went to Washington, had a good career as a tight end, or even a guy like Tyree Jackson that was a quarterback at Buffalo, 6'7", 250 pounds. Philadelphia tried to make it work. But those bigger frame type of players, the Jimmy Graham buckets of the world, as you know, there's potential for those types of players. Now, again, I agree with you. Maybe 7th round, maybe priority UDFA. There's going to be a team that takes a chance on this kid, actually come in and potentially be a guy, hey, be a Y on our line of scrimmage and also maybe flex out in space, or maybe be a guy that gets 10% of the snaps and works in a red zone package here or there.
Yeah, I really like him, and he didn't get much of a chance last year. It was the first time he played college football. I mean, he'd been a basketball player, so. I've seen a lot of bodies like him that have done very well in the NFL. So
correct.
I'm a big fan of his, and I'm cheering for him. Ryan, you're amazing. I have thoroughly enjoyed this, and you are on point, and just really enjoy this. I know the draft's coming up soon, which got to be exciting for you, and I really appreciate your time today. It's been very, very insightful and just great stuff. So have a great rest of your day, and thanks for coming on the show.
Of course. Thanks for having me. We'll talk soon. Take care.
There you have it. Ryan Fowler, NFL draft analyst for the Draft Network. Ryan had some great stuff. Very good stuff. Loved it. All right. Our NFL draft conversation with Ryan Fowler is part of the Big 12 at noon on the Sean O'Connell Show, brought to you by Mountain Land Supply. Visit mountainlandsupply.com. We're going to talk religion. Yeah. Religion and sports. Or sports is a religion. Actually, sports is our national religion. I don't know if people knew that. Anyways, we're going to talk about that.
Kind of is, isn't it, Scott?
Yeah, it kind of is. Yeah. We'll talk about that. Oh, we got tanking coming up, too. I love the tanking update. This is the Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 792.1 FM. All right, sports fans, welcome back. It is the Sean O'Connell Show here on ESPN 792.1 FM. I'm Scott Mitchell, the big lefty, filling in for Sean. By the way, I do a show called The Down and Dirty from 10 to 11 here on ESPN 792.1 FM, right before Sean's show. So tune in all day, listen all day long. Anyways, we have a fun show, fun time on our show, and so tune in there as well. Anyways, some breaking news. Breaking news. Running Utes forward Keanu Dawes is no longer in the transfer portal. That's right. He's back. Maybe Alex Jensen's making some headway. Of course, Keanu averaged 8 points and 4 rebounds per game this year. So, actually, former running Ute Hunter Erickson has committed to Hawaii last night.
Yeah, so
some good news, bad news.
Some good news, bad news. More good than bad. All due respect to Hunter Erickson, not a guy that you should be too devastated that he's leaving the program. He wasn't a starter or anything. He played really well off the bench this year, but a guy you can certainly replace, and you'd hope that Alex Jensen and his new coaching staff will be able to replace a guy like Hunter Erickson. But best of luck to Hunter, and honestly, jealous of that move. Last year of college, why don't I just move to Hawaii?
No, that's a pro move right there.
Absolutely.
That's like, I'll go play basketball and where it's nice and warm. Although the travel is kind of tough.
Yeah.
But,
Going back to Keanu, though, this is a huge, huge win for the Runnin' Utes. Now, he's not a guy who's going to compete for Big 12 Player of the Year. He's not a star player like that. But as many of the guys that were rotation players, really, really good role players on this Runnin' Utes team that you can retain, the better, and Keanu Dawes is one of those guys. He's got a lot of positional versatility on the defensive end too, Scott, because he's about 6'8", 6'9". He can play center for you, and he's physical enough to play against bigger players on defense, and he can play also kind of a bigger three. He's getting better with his 3-point shot. He can play so a bigger small forward or power forward on the offensive end as well. So this is huge for the Runnin' Utes to be able to get Keanu back.
We like that. That's good. And hopefully it's just the beginning of a lot more. I'm sure
Absolutely.
It is. All right, from time to time I get asked questions. And I got asked questions again. My guy Martin Kelly, the producer of my show, asked me a question this morning. He was full of questions.
We talked about be curious, not judgmental. Martin Kelly is really good at that. He's definitely a very curious guy, and he asks a lot of good questions.
He goes, so there was a guy he said, there's this guy at BYU, and he decided not to play in the NFL for religious reasons. And I'm like, well, I know who that guy is. It's Eli Herring, who actually I played high school football with.
Oh, did you?
So Eli and I went to the same high school. And funny story, Eli moved in his junior year, which was my senior year. And I was grateful for that because he immediately became our starting left tackle. Of course, he's a 16-year-old, 285-pound baby gorilla. Like, back in 1985, a 285-pound offensive lineman was massive. And it helped us to an undefeated season and a state championship. And it was a big part of us actually having a really good team. So nice to have Eli on our team.
Yeah, I mean, 285, that's not very big for NFL anymore, but that's huge for high school at any time, right?
Right. And back in 1985, he was a mountain man. Now, the sad part about it is he also played basketball, and he's on the junior varsity, and they didn't have a uniform big enough.
Oh, no.
For him to wear, except for mine,
okay.
Right? So the JV would play before the varsity, and he would wear my jersey. And then of course, he's 285 pounds. You think he's gonna not sweat? No, he's like, so he
had to share jersey with him.
He literally would end the game, go in the locker room, and hand me this like sweat-soaked shirt.
Oh my gosh!
To wear, and I'm like,
you have to go play a game,
and I got to go play, and bless his heart. He goes, sorry, Scott. Every time he'd hand me the jersey, he's like, thanks a lot. So Martin asked me,
were you number 19 in basketball too?
No, you couldn't have 19 because the digits. So
all right, because of because the refs have to.
the highest digit you could have would be 55, right? Because one hand, you can't hold up two hands to go one and then two hands for 19. That's too confusing to people. It's a dumb rule.
I
but
think
whatever.
nowadays they
do
the one, and I guess you have to do one. Yeah, whatever.
Now you can.
They let it. They just figure it out.
They let everything go these days.
Yeah.
No
okay, but going back to the question Martin had.
So the question was, well, how did that play into your life? Your religion. And I said, I got hammered when Eli Herring, because I was playing with the Detroit Lions, I got hammered by people asking me the question about, my religion and living my religion in such a tough environment like the NFL. And so people asked me, reporters in Detroit, well, aren't you one of those Mormons? That was the question. And of course, it's a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And I said, yes, I am. And they said, well, how come you're playing football on Sunday? And so, it was an interesting question, and one that, I dealt with on a personal level. But for me, it was like, I looked at, this was my job. It was an opportunity for me to do something special and unique. And I never really had anyone in church ever question that, and I never felt like I wasn't living up to my religion. In fact, if for me, I just made the choice to say, if I'm not working at my job, I'm going to be at church on Sunday, and that's what I did. It was kind of funny. So, I actually got advice from my church leaders here in Utah. Actually, some of the higher up, so like an apostle, and
look at you!
Actually met with an apostle before I left to go play professional football. And his advice to me was, wherever you live, just get involved in your community, get involved in church, and be there. And so that's what I did. And it was a great thing for me. So I'm in Miami, and so I worked with the missionaries. And so I would go out twice a week during the evening, and I go out with a missionary. And back in that time, LDS missionaries knocked on doors.
Right.
So I'm with a missionary. It's a Miami Dolphin knocking on doors in Miami, Florida. We got in every door. Like no one chased us away. No dogs barked at us. No one slammed the door in our face.
They probably wanted to talk more football than religion with you, but they still let you in.
It was awesome.
Yeah.
It's like, well, how hard is this?
Missionaries probably loved you.
What are you talking about? Missionaries? This is easy. Come on. And there was even, because it's a high emphasis of going on missions, and so I didn't serve a full-time mission, but I'll tell you, I did a lot of missionary work in my 20 years of not living in Utah, and happily did it. It was really amazing.
Were you able to be in contact and be a part of the wards and stakes that you lived in when you were playing?
So the advice I got was you go to church, congregation every week, your ward, and I was involved. Like when I played, I had callings, and in fact, another thing I did when I was in Florida is, so I was a part of the young men, and there were, 12 young men I'd go pick up every Wednesday night, take them to church, and their families weren't members, but they all were, and they were super active, and that was a really fun thing, and some just wonderful experiences in my life during my professional career. But there was a funny thing that happened, and it happens all the time, right? It's just something I was used to. And so I get drafted by the Miami Dolphins, and they do an article on me in the newspaper, and it says he's a Mormon from Utah. And so everyone, of course, all the team and coaches and everyone knew that I was LDS. And so Dan Marino goes, "So you're like one of those Mormons, right?" And and I go, "Yeah."
And one of those, yeah.
And he goes, "So you have like a lot of wives, right?" And that was the first question Dan Marino asked.
That's hilarious.
And I said, "No, I just got one." And he says, "I think that would be kind of cool."
No.
You have one that's a really good cook, and you have
split up the roles.
Right. So he thought it was a good idea. But it was constantly this pressure to drink. And people actually were like, they go, you don't drink, like, and I've never had a drink in my life, never had a drink of alcohol in my life, and it was mind blowing. And Marino says, we win the Super Bowl, and I'm gonna get you drunk. I don't care. That's what I'm gonna do. And it was constantly this like, for whatever reason, and like, I just didn't think it was that big a deal, but it's apparently a big deal to a lot of people. And I think they didn't really believe that was actually true. And as people were around me and saw that, like, I really do live my religion, like, I go to church, I live it all the time. And I've been perfect in my life, but far from it. And there was a tremendous amount of respect. And actually, at the end of the day, that's where it ended up. And so then there was a point where it was like, well, we think it's cool you don't drink, because now you're our designated driver.
Yeah.
So
now we can get hammered because we have you.
And I go, look, I'll protect you, and I'll make sure you get home safe. And I'm happy to do those kind of things. And so it meant a lot to me in my life, to be able to kind of live, well, not to kind of, but to actually live. And I just really grew as a person and as an individual. And so it's one of the questions I've been asked probably the most, like, how could you be in that environment and not succumb to all the temptations of that world? And the truth is my job was kind of boring. Like being like the actual function of your job is where it was boring. Like, I got up early in the morning and I went to work, and then when it was over, I came home. And when we went and traveled to a city, you would travel on a Saturday afternoon. You had very little time on your own once you got to the city you were at. You got up early the next morning and went to the football stadium, played a football game, and went home. So there was never any time to really get in trouble. And where guys got into trouble was after practice, they'd go out. And I just never went out. I never went places where there were really, there were really opportunities. I never really wanted to. And then in the off season, that's when guys get in trouble. Like, there's a statistic that of all the incidents that happened in the off season, I think one year, that was probably 1999, and it's probably somewhere, it might be more, it might be less, I don't know. I think there were 349 issues or incidents with the law with NFL players in the off season.
Wow.
What and as little as, like, misdemeanor, a DUI, all the way up to murder, right? I mean,
yeah,
like there was murder that actually
assault,
happened,
whatever.
O.J. Simpson and Ray Caruth, so, but it was because guys had so much time, and for me, I was home. I really was. I mean, my religion was my life. It was part of my life. It's just who I was, and so it was never. Surprisingly, it was actually really boring, and there wasn't a lot of excitement. I did, however. So you probably don't know who this is. Some of the older members listening to the audience here might know a guy named Luther Campbell. So Luther Campbell was 2 Live Crew, and he was one of the first hardcore rappers.
All right.
And he was my neighbor, like, down the street where I first lived when I moved to Miami. And he, along with our safety, Lewis Oliver, who played at Florida, they held a party at South Beach every Friday night.
Man, and that was probably the place to be for people in Miami.
Can only imagine what Lewis invited me every Friday.
I'm sure he did.
He had a flyer, and he brought it to my locker, and he personally handed it to me every week. And he goes, "You got to come to our party." And I can't imagine the debauchery that went on at that party, and I never went. But because I lived as far as I would be boring to Charles Barkley.
You'd be boring to Charles Barkley.
Yeah. That's why I don't understand why he doesn't like Utah.
Yeah, no, it's definitely for anyone who grew up in the church, is still active in the church, whatever any kind of experience being LDS or around LDS, you have an idea of how difficult that might be to have a job that you have to work every Sunday, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's something that people are members of the church who are sports fans always think about. How did Steve Young do that? How does Andy Reid continue to do that as head coach of the Kansas City Chiefs? And people like you as well, Scott. So it's and people like Eli Herring, they make the choice to it's important to me to not do anything on Sunday so that I can be at church and whatever, and that's, to me, that's keeping the Sabbath day holy. But for others like you, I think it's great that you found a way to live your religion while still having to work on Sundays.
I actually talked to Eli about it many years later. I said, "Do you have any idea how much grief I got because of you?" And he goes, "I'm so sorry." He said, "I just wasn't a person that, was a high profile player like you were. I wouldn't. You were in a different position, a different place." And he goes, "I think it's wonderful." He says, "I if I was in your place, I would have done the same thing." He says, he says, "It's a very personal decision for me, and I just felt like, for me to be the best version of myself, it was not to go and do that." And I totally respected what he did, and I respect people who go and do it as well. And
it also
like myself,
it also sounds like if he felt, or maybe had heard from scouts and teams or whatever, that he had a better shot at having an NFL career, he probably would have played.
No,
you don't think so?
He was a legitimate guy. Yeah, I mean, for him not to go was like, I think he was a second, third round draft. I mean, he was going to be a legitimate guy in the NFL.
Yeah.
And he would have been. I have no question about it. But you have to kind of know him and his personality, and it's very fitting of him, and he's a great guy and has just been done wonderful things in his life. But I also ran into a lot of people that were very religious. And a lot of people, a lot of players in the NFL actually are quite religious and quite principled. It's not just debauchery and
of course not.
And you have that, believe it. Like, I heard stories, like on a daily basis of what happened the night before, and it's like, wow. But they certainly, I had a lot of respect. I met a lot of like outstanding people. Roger Staubach is someone who comes to my mind, and I got to spend some time with him, and he's just a very principled man, and his family's everything to him. And I think of a guy like John Offerdahl, who was actually started Einstein Brothers Bagels. We were teammates together, and John's just a really good human being, and a lot of high quality people that I was able to. Kevin Glover was our center with the Detroit Lions, just a very principled human being. Luther Ellis, and Jeff Hardings, are teammates as well. Just really, really good people, outstanding people, and who, I think a lot of, and just lived their principles, and they were convicted to their beliefs, and it's something that I have a tremendous respect for. All right, let's take a break because this is what I've wanted to get to all day. We've got an NBA tank race update around the corner. This is the Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. All righty, sports fans, welcome back. It is the Sean O'Connell Show here on ESPN 792.1 FM, Utah's #1 sports talk. I'm Scott Mitchell filling in for Sean today, tomorrow, and Friday. Fun show today. We're going to go to our tank race update, but I've been so focused on the tanking, and we're doing a pretty darn good job of it, but I want to understand the secondary tank. So if you can maybe enlighten me, I know it's with the T-Wolves here.
Yeah.
But talk to me about the tank race, and I'm curious about the secondary tank race as well.
Yeah, so as part of the Rudy Gobert trade, the return for Rudy Gobert, one of the 4 draft picks that the Jazz got in exchange for the future Hall of Fame center, was Minnesota's 2025 first-round pick. So
Which is this year.
So that is we're kind of calling it the secondary tank. Obviously, the tank is the Jazz losing as much as possible,
right?
And then rooting for the T-Wolves to also lose as much as possible. Unfortunately, they're not cooperating with the secondary tank. They started the season out a little shaky, but they've really gradually gotten into some really good form here and playing maybe their best basketball in the most important time of year heading into the playoffs. So
great.
Yeah.
Way to go,
including
where do they stand right now? So if the Jazz got the pick, what would it be right now? Do we know what it is?
We don't know exactly.
It's not a lottery pick, though,
no, right? It would not be a lottery because right now they're projecting that even though they have to win in the play-in tournament to actually make the playoffs at this point, they're projecting them to be one of the 8 teams in the West. So right now it's going to be around 17 or 18, which is not the worst spot.
Right.
But we were hoping for a second lottery pick. Probably
we're
not
greedy.
going to happen.
We want all the highest draft picks we can absolutely get.
So speaking of the T-Wolves, a heartbreaking win for that secondary tank. Scott, last night.
Heartbreaking win.
140 to 139 in double overtime in Denver. Jokic had a 61-point triple-double, Scott.
Oh. Yeah,
and let me just tell you how this thing ended because it was nuts. Nuggets led by 1, 20 to 30 seconds left, somewhere in there. Russell Westbrook intercepts a pass. Then and then he passes up to Christian Brown, and they kind of do a give-and-go thing. Instead of pulling it out, because they have a 1-point lead,
right?
Dribble it out, wait for them to foul you,
right?
Because they're going to have to foul to extend the game.
Time's your enemy.
They go. Westbrook has a fairly open layup. He blows the layup on the fast break opportunity. It would have put him up 3. Okay, now there's about 10 seconds to go. The T-Wolves are going the other way. They might have called a timeout too. Anyway, they either were going the other way without a timeout, or they called timeout and ran another play. They draw a foul on a 3-pointer at the buzzer. Guess who commits the foul, Scott?
Westbrook.
Russell Westbrook commits the foul on former Jazz man Nickeil Alexander-Walker.
Oh my goodness. He
only has to make they put 0.1 on the clock.
Oh my goodness.
So he really only has to make 2 of the 3 free throws to win. That's exactly what he does. They win 140 to 139. Now the foul itself looked pretty borderline to me, Scott. But regardless of that, they called it, and he kind of did the Superman dive towards the shooter that always puts you in a bad position. Right. You're not in position to get a rebound if he misses, and you put yourself in position to foul if he misses too. And so it looked like he was going to foul him, which is probably more of the reason why he got called for the foul more than the actual contact. But yeah, there you go. That Russell Westbrook blows it for the secondary tank for the Jazz and for the Denver Nuggets, who are in position for the 2 seed in the West too. So that's a big loss for the Nuggets. Yeah. Tough, heartbreaking win for the secondary tank. That was the only game that factored in the tank race last night. Lots of them tonight, including the Jazz back in action in Houston against the Rockets, 6 o'clock. Watch it on KJazz. We got some injury updates, Scott.
Okay.
Cody Williams, the number 10 overall pick, rookie this year. He's had an up-and-down season. He tested positive for mono yesterday on April Fool's Day. Not an April Fool's joke. He's out for the season. He's going to miss the next 6 games because he has mono.
Wow.
They officially said that in there.
I think I went through high school with mono.
Did you?
Yeah.
And then John Collins and Lowry Markkinen, they didn't say they're out for the season, but there's only like 11 days left in the season, Scott, and they said they're both going to be reevaluated in a week with lower body injuries.
They're out. It's done.
Yeah, so we can basically, reading between the lines, we can say they probably aren't going to play another game, but technically they might play one or two of the last games of the season. So there's the injury update. Jazz at Rockets.
Let me ask you a question. So the Jazz are 16-60. Wizards are 16-59.
Yeah.
If they end up with identical records, who has the tiebreaker? Do you know that?
I do not know who has the tiebreaker.
They're 1-1 head to head, right?
I'm gonna do some research on that, and I'm gonna have that for you on Friday in the tank race update. Right. How about that? Because that could very well happen. They have the same amount of wins. If one of those teams doesn't win anymore, they're going to have the same records. So it's definitely something we need to look into.
So let me throw a scenario out. A what if.
Yeah.
Okay. So obviously you talked about Gobert and you talked about Donovan Mitchell. What if the Utah Jazz hit the lottery, go on, with some of these picks and just win a championship? Maybe win a couple of championships.
Ooh.
At that point.
Couple championships.
At that point, do you immortalize Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert and give them street names? Right?
So like John Stockton and Karl Malone.
And just have it a block, right?
Yeah.
So you have a whole block around, is like because that's really what was the catalyst for this opportunity. Is getting rid of those franchise players.
I mean,
I
don't think I would, because by that time, especially if they win a couple championships, the players who contributed to the championships are going to be a bigger deal than Rudy.
Of course they are. Well, they get a statue.
Yeah, they get a statue, but Donovan and Rudy get the street names. Okay.
Well, maybe Donovan and Rudy get. I don't know. Maybe we give one of them a street in Ogden,
okay,
and one of them a street in Provo.
All right,
right, and then the winners, of course, they'll get statues, they'll get all that stuff.
Yeah, pretty good idea.
I mean,
I would absolutely retire Gobert's jersey.
You got to think
Donovan maybe not as sure of a thing for me as Rudy's jersey going up in the rafters. So that would probably be the way that I would go, is considering that for Donovan as well. But, yeah, interesting thought. Right. Speaking of the Wizards that you just brought up, they're hosting the Kings tonight. Pelicans are at the Clippers. That helps both tanks if the Pelicans win, Scott, because the Clippers are just a half game behind the T-Wolves in the play-in, securely in the play-in.
Yes.
So, anyway, that Pelicans win, it doesn't help both tanks because you want the Clippers to win because they're behind them. So anyway, you're gonna have whatever happens is gonna help one of the tanks.
One of the tanks will be supplemented.
And then also some more relevant injury news to the tank race. Earlier this week, the Pelicans, it's reported that they have decided to sit C.J. McCollum and Zion Williamson out the rest of the year. So they are officially. Don't care if they win the rest of the season, which is how they played all year long anyway. But this makes it officially official.
Surprise!
And then the Hornets are at the Pacers. Hornets also in the bottom three of the standings. Speaking of the standings, Jazz, you mentioned 16-60. This is the first 60+ loss season in franchise history, Scott.
I'm aware of that.
Yeah, so this is officially the worst season in franchise history.
Isn't that wonderful? Isn't that beautiful?
It's a great time to have it.
It's beautiful.
Wizards are right behind them, a half game back, 16-59, as you mentioned. Hornets are 19-56, 3.5 games back. That's getting the Jazz. That means Jazz and Hornets are all but guaranteed to have the worst two records in the league.
Yeah.
So there you go. And then the Pelicans are 5.5 back at 21-54. Not a threat to the Jazz or Wizards, but the bottom three teams in the standings all get the highest odds at the number one overall pick. So they're still playing for something in that regard, just 2 games back of that third spot. Where are the T-Wolves? They're tied for 6th with Memphis a half game ahead of the 8th place Clippers. And there's only 11 days left in the regular season, Scott. Most teams have 7 or less games left. Jazz have 6. And then this part, real quick, affects the running Utes. The Mavs are in 9th place, 2 games up on the 11th place Suns. If they make the play-in, Alex Jensen, who's currently a Mavericks assistant coach, his official first day on the job gets delayed 1 more week. If they don't make the play-in, he gets to begin full-time after the regular season ends on the 13th. So we're rooting for the Mavs to lose if you're a running Utes fan.
Yeah.
So you can get Alex, your coach,
get him out of there.
Going as soon as possible. So that's your tank race update.
Love it. All right, good stuff. When we come back, we got Josh Furlong with KSL Sports. He's Utah's beat writer. He's going to talk about spring ball, which will be a fun conversation. I've been to a lot of practices, so I'd like to hear what Josh has to say here on the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 792.1 FM. All righty, sports fans, welcome back into the show. It's the Sean O'Connell Show here on ESPN 792.1 FM. Proud to be part of Utah's ESPN radio network. I'm Scott Mitchell filling in for Sean today, tomorrow, and Friday. Oh, man, it's been such a fun show, and it's going to get even funner. If you'd like to listen to us, you can go to you can listen stream, you can listen podcast, live streaming, actually. Go to ESPN700sports.com, ESPN 700 app. It's free anywhere you get your apps or your smart speaker. Just tell it to play ESPN 700. And we're also on YouTube, ESPN 700 Sports on YouTube. You can get the podcast version on ESPN700sports.com, also on ESPN 700 app. Just search for the Sean O'Connell Show. All right, joining us now is Josh Furlong. Of course, he's with KSL.com. He's the Utah beat writer there. Josh, welcome to the show. How you doing today?
I'm doing well, Scott. How are you doing?
Oh, living the dream. Keep saying that. I'm living the dream, and it's not a nightmare, so I think it's a good day. You've been to spring football practice. What's your initial thoughts on spring football this year for Utah?
Yeah, I mean, I think the vibe of the team is at an all-time high. I think it's competitive. We get to see these spring practices every year, and they're spring, and so it's a different kind of mindset sometimes. But I think you see a team that's really getting after it. They're really trying to improve. They want to do better than what they did last year. I've been impressed with kind of the diversity of the offense in terms of the different types of plays that they want to run. So, I think there's a lot of positivity coming into the spring camp, and I think there's reasons for optimism as you kind of look at where Utah's at right now and kind of how they've retooled and what they've done.
All right, so it's way, way, way too early, and some you hear some early grumblings, none of which involve Utah as far as a contender within the conference. Where do you think Utah is right now in relation to the other teams in the conference and their chance to go to the Big 12 championship and go play in the college football playoffs?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a team that's going to be somewhat under the radar in terms of kind of the predictions that are going out there for Utah. I think for many, until Utah can prove it in the Big 12, they're not going to get the same respect that they got last year. But with that said, I think many would turn to Utah if things started to improve, right? And so I think this is a team that has all the talent to be able to compete at a high level. I believe that they can compete for a Big 12 championship, and be able to get into that playoff bid. But yeah, I mean, like it's hard to fully know until we see it on the field. But I think what Utah's done is they've done a really good job of building out their roster. They've addressed a lot of positions of need, and they have done it in a way where it's not just surrounded around one player. I think last year there was an emphasis to really kind of maximize Cam Rising's strengths and really try to get him the guys that he felt confident with and really try to help him do what he needed to do. And when he went down, you saw a lot of frustrations there. Whereas this year, I think Utah is really playing complementary offensive football, where they've got a lot of guys, that can step up. You can be kind of multifaceted in how you approach this. And so I don't know that they would take the similar hits if something were to happen. But at the same vein, look, we're in spring. We don't fully know what's going on until they get onto the field. But I think by all accounts, this is a team that can compete, but they're going to do it with more under the radar kind of situation than being the team that everybody's going to come after as the team to beat.
Man, I've heard Coach Whittingham time and time again talk about the importance of if you're going to be a contending team in college football, money is just a big part of it. It's a big part of it with recruiting, with everything that goes on. Where do you think the Utah faithful are, the alumni, the people the boosters that really support this program? Do you think there's a commitment level there to say, all right, we're all in?
Yeah, I mean, I think with football, there definitely is a commitment. Now, with that being said, could there always be more? Sure. And I think you're seeing now that BYU is getting into the fray a little bit more. Maybe that's kind of galvanizing Utah boosters a little bit more to kind of say, we want to compete at this high level, right? Utah's always done well with getting the talent, developing them, and being able to put out a good product on the field where they're competitive, they're going to be aggressive, they're going to hurt you on the defensive side of the ball. But now there's the level where you kind of have to throw that money around. So I think there is an investment into this program. I think the attention has definitely been more on football, obviously, than there has been in basketball. And because basketball hasn't really been as efficient in the last few years, it's been really easy for people just to kind of throw their money into football. So could there be more? Yeah, 100%. I think, for Utah, they have to really decide how committed do you want to be into this program, right? You're going to get the NCAA settlement that's going to come down where Utah's going to pay their players. So that's going to factor into it. But on top of that, you've got to be able to kind of say, hey, how much investment are you going to make to make this a program that's going to be competitive? Utah obviously has desires to be in even grander situations than what they're at. But to do that, you have to have a wholesale kind of commitment to that. And I think Utah's there, but there's a lot of other teams in the country that are kind of improving as well. Oregon is never going away. Ohio State's never going away. Alabama's never going away. And not that you're going to necessarily compete on the same level with those types of teams. You have to kind of show your level of commitment, or else you're going to get passed over, and some of these guys are going to go to other teams, and then it's just, you're back down to where you don't want to be. So I think it's still in a good spot, but at the same time, you have to win, you have to get more investment, you have to be able to put in more capital into the program, and if you do so, you'll be okay.
Speaking of kind of some big news about basketball, Keanu Dawes withdrew his name from the transfer portal today, and he was, of course, one of the key players from this season. So maybe there is more of a commitment there on the basketball side of it. Maybe that's kind of one of the signs of things to happen.
Yeah, I think Keanu was kind of the guy that Alex Jensen really wanted on his roster. There's other guys, right? But I think he's a guy that you can see a bright future, a guy that's going to be aggressive, get in the post, can be a scorer. You can see that as the season develops, he really kind of became much more comfortable in the system and became much better in who he is. Now, if you can get him in more of a playing system with a guy that understands it at a higher level, can he be more consistent, and can he be in that spot at a lot more times and really help Utah? But I think this is a key piece for what Utah needs. They need a guy that they already know, a guy that has a ton of potential. That way you're not having to go into the portal and bring in a guy that doesn't know the system. Now, granted, there's going to be a lot of guys that don't know the system. There's going to be a lot of turnover. There's going to be a lot of guys that in there. But I think he provides kind of the key piece that allows Utah to have some optimism going into this, knowing that they've got to bring in a lot of different players.
You're seeing a lot of guys start heading to college football from the NFL, both coaches and like these GM types of players. I mean, Ron Rivera is now at Cal. Andrew Luck is at Stanford. You're seeing coaches like Deion Sanders and Bill Belichick and Mike, Lombardi or is there with Belichick. And do you see that as becoming more of a norm? And is it something that potentially Utah would consider moving forward?
Yeah, I think, in this age where collegiate sports, especially men's basketball and football, where it's becoming much more of kind of a training ground, so to speak, for the next level. And it always has been, but I think it's becoming much more professionalized and making it so that there's not a lot of drop-off and kind of moving on, right? Like a lot of these kids are now dealing with agents. They're dealing with kind of the business side, so to speak, of what an NFL or an NBA roster can be. Now, it's not going to be to the same level, but I think from the same vantage point, you're getting a lot of these coaches that are seeing it, that it's not that different, right? Now that you're getting a lot of these teams that are getting general managers, maybe the recruiting side of it in college football or basketball or whatever it have you, that's not as bad, right? Like you hear a lot of the times where, football specifically, why would I want to go down to college and have this nonstop recruiting where I don't get any breaks, where I can stay in the NFL and kind of have set parameters? Now it's becoming a little bit different. Not that college still isn't a 24/7 sport, but you're getting it where it's much more formalized in terms of general managers are kind of making roster decisions with the head coach. The head coach isn't necessarily being the end-all be-all in that. And so it's becoming much more professionalized. And so I think as that continues, you're going to start seeing guys that are much more interested in that. Obviously, college can benefit from that because you're bringing in this wealth of knowledge of guys that understand the system at the highest level of football. The fact that Bill Belichick is at North Carolina, you just can't replicate that kind of knowledge at a collegiate level, right? Like, obviously, Nick Saban and a lot of these other coaches that have been great at the collegiate level are great, but you have somebody that understands it at the highest levels, won multiple Super Bowls, has coached, arguably the greatest quarterback of all time, and you can translate that now to these levels. So I think you're starting to see kind of a leveling up of sports in the collegiate level, where this becomes much more at a higher level, so that by the time they get into professional ranks, it's less culture shock and it allows these guys to be able to be much more efficient in their time. So it just continues to raise the game. It's just more of a specialization of the game. I mean, you look at it even my kids' level, right? My kids, they join these competitive leagues, whether it be baseball, football, basketball.
Are they paying your kids, Josh?
They're not. No. If they are, I'm going to be, whatever. But I mean, I think they're starting to specialize at such a young age where these kids are learning the business side of it, right? They're transferring to different teams. They're trying to get better. They're working with their own individual coaches, and it's improving the game. But at the same time, you're losing a lot of what makes college or youth sports so great is because now it's becoming so much more about a business and trying to get it to a destination. So it has its benefits, but at the same time, you kind of lose some of the appeal of what made college basketball, college football so great because you're starting to see it be turned into much more of a professional business.
Yeah, I wonder if these coaches are enticed by it because there is no salary cap. It's just whatever your boosters can pay. And you can go in the transfer portal a couple of times a year, and you can go anywhere in the country to get players. And if you have more money and you have the appeal of someone like a Bill Belichick, man, that seems like and for him, I don't have to wait for the draft. I'm not restricted by a salary cap. I can go essentially buy a championship and have a heck of a program. And there's really the only thing that stops me is money, and if you have the money, I don't know, it just seems like that would be an appealing thing as well.
Absolutely. I mean, I think you see that with Dion even, right? Like, I think you see he doesn't have to go out on recruiting. They come to him. So it's not been that bad of a situation at all.
So who's made an impression on you in spring ball? Maybe a surprise, maybe someone who's just really stood out to you?
That's a good question. I mean, I think there's been a few guys that I've really kind of started to see separate. One of those yesterday was Dadrian Zipperer. I thought he had a really good showing in terms of what he was able to do. He was getting separation as a wide receiver, was making some really great catches that Devin Dampier had thrown. So he's a guy there. Running back Daniel Bray and Devin Green, those two have kind of been guys that have been pretty great in what they've done in the roles that they've been asked to do. And granted, look, like they're in pads, but they're not going full, tackling and stuff like that. So I'm curious to see how that develops moving forward. But I think they're showing optimism and progress. And then even yesterday, there's the Whitmore wide receiver who had a great showing. Cut a lot of screen passes, was able to get out in open space and kind of make those work. I mean, we've seen at Utah, screen passes haven't always been the best situation, but he made them efficient, effective, and so I think there's outside of the standard names that we're used to and guys that Devin Dampier, Wayshawn Parker, guys that come in with a lot of notoriety. I think those are kind of a handful, some of the guys that I'm impressed with. Hunter Andrews continues to impress and just kind of the differences that they put him in. Really fascinated to see how they utilize him. So I think there's a lot to be optimistic about with this team, and I think you're starting to see a lot of these guys really step up and take ownership in kind of their own craft.
I just hope Zipper turns out to be good because I just want to say his name. That's all I get. I just, I mean, Zipper. That's an awesome name for especially a wide receiver. Quarterback situation. Of course, there's Devin Dampier. The one I'm fascinated with is Isaac Wilson. It looks like he's probably the number 2 guy. I don't know, but given the quarterback situation in the last few years, does Isaac Wilson play into what's going to happen this year?
Yeah, that's always been kind of the interesting note here, because coming into this season, I'd gotten a lot of feedback that they really wanted to emphasize kind of a redshirt season for Isaac so that he could develop, he could grow. However, a lot of that has changed, right? Like we're seeing him as the QB2, and he's been the guy that's been in there. And so whether it's out of need or whether he's stepping up and doing it, that's the question that I have, right? At the same time, I think you're seeing a little bit of progress from him. I think his confidence was shot by the end of the year. And so there's some building up period that has to come. Maybe it's a humbling period, not that he needed it necessarily, but I think there's an opportunity for him to kind of own up who he is while still kind of improving. And then having a guy like Devin Dampier in front of him, I think that helps. Now, in just a little bit that I've seen, and you would have obviously a better understanding of this than I would, but I see that he's starting to get a little bit quicker with his release. That was obviously a big thing that was a big problem for him, where he's holding on to the ball too long. But I think if he's making those strides where he can get the ball out faster, I think that can help him. At the same time, I think this offense opens it up so much more for kind of his play style. He's always been in an RPO type system, a spread offense that has allowed himself to kind of just work whatever needs to be done. It doesn't have a lot of checks. You're not necessarily worrying about so many things as you were in a pro style offense. If those things kind of all come together, I think this offense can benefit him. But I'm still curious to kind of see the role that they have for him. Right now, he still remains the QB2. Kyle talks about how he's seen improvement. But when it all comes to it at the end, is this who they want as their number 2, or is this out of need? I don't know. I'm still curious to see that, and I'm really fascinated to see how it works in spring.
Yeah, I am too, and I think you make a really good point, and the offense might fit his style a little bit better, and so is he over kind of the I guess the PTSD of last season, and is he mentally in a good spot? Because it's a lot quicker reads, it's a lot faster, and so it makes it easier for him. That'll be a fun one to watch as it moves on. Speaking of offenses, Jason Beck, where do you think he is in his implementation of his offense? You think he feels good about it? Is it coming along? Where do you think that part of the process is?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's still kind of in a figure it out standpoint, right? I think they're throwing a lot at the wall right now and seeing what can stick. With that said, I believe that they have a good idea of how they want to run it, and I think he's gotten a lot of buy-in from the players. You're seeing a system that obviously Dampier provides a lot of flexibility in what they do, whether that be through passing or whether that be through running. But you've got all these other guys like a Nate Johnson or Hunter Andrews who you can put in the backfield that can be just different looks that allow this offense to be so dynamic and explosive, right? And so I think Beck really can utilize a lot of different things. Like we've seen, whether it be a pitch on a play, an option play, or, you're seeing Dampier having, the ball as a straight call to him. But you're seeing a lot of different things where Utah is trying to be diverse in what they do. And so as much as they want to have the run be kind of the standard and kind of set things up, this offense with Beck and kind of what he's trying to instill is pretty dynamic and explosive. And if you can get that defense thinking, which I think you can with the personnel that Utah has, then they're good. So as much as I think there's definitely going to be some set plays, obviously, that Utah has and kind of the install that they want to have when they go into fall camp, I think this is an offense, too, that can be pretty open to adapting to different things. Like I said, it's not a pro-style offense, so there's not as much, looking at different things or addressing how the defense is approaching you. This very much so can be a spur-of-the-moment thing. Not, obviously they have to practice it, but they can be much more flexible with how they approach this, and I think you're seeing a lot more success that way.
Yeah, if this offense can produce 10 to 14 more points a game, this team's they're gonna be competing for a championship, because I think the defense is going to be as solid, maybe even more so than they were a year ago. So it's going to be a fun thing to watch. I'm curious. Of course, the Red Rocks are hosting the regionals that start tomorrow. Any thoughts or comments about where they are, and is this number 49? Are they going to the national championships for the 49th straight year?
Yeah, I think this sets up well for them. They've got a great situation, beyond just hosting. They get an opportunity where they have teams that they beat before. They've got a situation where they can compete and have what they need. So their first meet is going to be Denver, Stanford, and either BYU or Utah State. All teams that they've either beat this year or have very familiar with, meaning Stanford last year. But look, gymnastics is an interesting sport where you can be the best team out there, and all it takes is having one bad event or something goes wrong and suddenly things change. Oklahoma last year was expected to be the leading candidate to be the national champions, and then had some stumbles in the semifinals of the Nationals and ended up losing out. So as much as Utah is in a good position, and I think this is probably the best position they've been in a long time, anything can happen. And as long as these gymnasts are competing and performing at a high level, it's going to be, a great opportunity for Utah. The fact that you can get it at home really, really bodes well for them. I think that bodes well for fans who want to come out and see it. What better place to be able to potentially have Utah and UCLA competing in a regional final than at the Huntsman Center?
It should be fun to watch. I mean, it's just been so impressive for so many years. So we hope it works out well for them. Josh, really appreciate your time. Hope your kids are making money in youth sports, and we'll catch you soon.
Let's hope so. I appreciate it, Scott.
All right, we'll see you. There it is, Josh Furlong from KSL.com, Utah's beat writer. Good stuff. Really insightful there from Josh, so really appreciate it. Utah Spring Football is here, and ESPN 792.1 FM have all the coverage you need, brought to you by Jersey Mike's. Head to ESPN700sports.com for details. We're going to give you some spring sounds from Utah football here around the corner on the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 792.1 FM. Alrighty, sports fans, welcome back to the Sean O'Connell Show here on ESPN 792.1 FM. Scott Mitchell filling in for Sean for the next few days. I'll be here till Friday. Anyways, hope you're having a great day. Hope you're enjoying the show. I know I am. I've had a great time listening. Anyways, so lots and lots of fun. We've been talking about Utah spring football with Josh Furlong. I've been up to a lot of practices and watched. I have my own observations. We thought it'd be kind of fun to hear what some of the more important people have to say about this. So we're gonna give you some sounds of spring football right now. Right now we got Coach Witt. Here's what he had to say.
How's things going?
Yeah, we're progressing. It's I would say we're on schedule. We're now in the middle third of spring ball. We practices next 5, 6 through 10, and so far we've made a lot of progress. Some guys are stepping up. Really impressed with Bird Ficklin, the quarterback freshman, true freshman. He's doing some good things. Running backs are showing a lot of promise. Still got to sort things out at wide receiver. That's a position right now that is still we're trying to determine who the real go-to guys are going to be, and it's going to be a process. It'll probably take all the way through spring and maybe into some fall camp, but we've got to get that decided. Offensive line has advertised, got a good group up front. Defense running around making plays, so a lot of good things in the first 6 practices.
For that wide receiver room, is there anybody that you feel confident in, or is it more just kind of a pecking order type situation?
Oh, we feel confident in a bunch of them. It's just who's going to step up consistently and make plays. And so it's not like we're searching for a guy that can catch the ball or make a play. It's who's going to step up and be the go-to guy. That has to happen.
What sort of progress have you seen from tight end Landon King?
Landon's done a nice job. He's put some weight on. He's about 10 pounds heavier than he was last year, so that's helped him. And he's kind of a hybrid. He's not really a true hand-in-the-dirt tight end, and he's not really a true H-back mover. He's a tweener. But I think we're using him in a lot of good ways and doing some different things with him. Dallin Bentley, speaking of tight ends, is really having a really good spring camp. For the first 6 days, he's been at his best. He's definitely playing his best football since he's got here. And so we feel like the tight end spot, although not as much 12 personnel and personnel groups with 2 tight ends that we've used in the past, they're going to still be a big factor.
You moved Hunter Andrews from linebacker to running back to linebacker, and now he's at tight end.
Well, he's a hybrid. He's more a running back tight end / guy. He's not really a true tight end. But anyway, go ahead.
I was just going to ask, just what have you seen from him through these first 2 weeks in that new role?
Good things. He's a typical big back when he's in the backfield. Does a great job in blitz pickup. He's got excellent speed. He's a 4.4 kid, so he's got the ability to go the distance. He was a really good running back in high school, over 1,000 yards his senior year. And he's also doing a lot of things at the tight end spot. So he's one of those guys, kind of like Nate Johnson, that's playing several positions.
How's Ryan Davis looked, and how's his connection, with Devin coming from New Mexico?
Yeah, Ryan's done a nice job, and he obviously has a leg up knowing the offense, just like Devin does, and just like running back Rogers does. But he's a guy that shows up every day, works hard, and really is going to add to what we're doing.
Do you feel this offense suits your offensive line and their strengths well?
I do. It's a run-heavy offense in a lot of ways, and our offensive line loves the run block, and I think that it's a really good fit for the personnel that we have up front.
You mentioned Bird. What was the biggest thing that stood out from him so far?
Well, just he's getting really good command of the offense. He's got a big-time arm. His arm is live, and he's accurate. And so he's put on some weight. He was thin when he got here, but he's put on like 15 pounds since he got here. And he's really starting to feel comfortable in the offense and doing things that we saw him doing in his high school team.
You said that Wayshawn had the inside track and running back. Who are the guys behind him that you're starting to see that could push him?
Well, Rogers is doing a good job. Bray, the freshman, is a guy that he's a little different type of back. He'll have a role for us. Hunter Andrews is doing a nice job there. Nate Johnson's also getting some reps at running back. And also when you have a quarterback like Devin Dampier, who rushed for over 1,100 yards last year, that's part of the running game and part of the run game production. So we expect him to be a big part of it here as well this year.
Have you started to see any separation in the cornerbacks room?
Corners, well, Scooby Davis seems to have a really good hold on one of the outside spots. Smith Snowden's got the nickel spot locked down right now, and so the battle is really for that corner opposite Scooby. And right now I'd say Blake Cotton is doing some good things, as is Donovan Saunders rather. And who else was sort of showing? Tristan Thompson's doing a nice job. So.
What about behind Smith? Behind Smith?
Benny, Jackson Benny was doing a nice job there, and some other guys that were, nickel's kind of the specialty spot, and so we're trying to get the outside solidified first.
Coach, I was going to ask about your Aura ring. If your team was wearing an Aura ring,
no,
what would the ring say?
I don't know, but it's for the team. I don't know, but for me, I still can't figure it out. So we'll see. It's a total.
All right, there you have it. Coach Whittingham giving kind of a State of the Union, I guess.
Yeah.
And it not really overly shocking. I think there's some interesting potential players that it's kind of like they're you could almost say this entire offense is filled with these multifaceted guys. So you take Landon King, who I really like. And he's not quite a tight end, and he's not quite a wide receiver, and he's kind of a hybrid guy. Then you get Hunter Andrews, who's a tremendous athlete, and he can really fit a lot of different roles. And then you have a quarterback who rushed for 1,100 yards a year ago, and he's kind of a hybrid guy. You have Nate Johnson, who is getting wide receiver reps, running back reps, quarterback reps. You literally, like, this whole offense is multifaceted, multi-diversified, and it's full of Swiss Army knives. I mean, it's a really unique situation, and kind of back to what Josh Furlong said. It allows you an ability to find production in some maybe non-traditional ways, and it's like, well, like we're going to get running from the quarterback, or if the quarterback, maybe we'll get a different look from where we get production in the wide receiver situation or the tight end situation. And what will be fascinating, and it was one thing I didn't ask Josh that I actually would have liked to, is maybe where is there a position after spring ball that you go out in the transfer portal? Like who you looking for? And that's the nice thing about spring football, is everyone kind of figures out how they're going to fit into things or not fit into things. And then there's a reset and a reevaluation before you get into the summer and into fall camp. And maybe it is a wide receiver position, but there's a lot of options even at the wide receiver position, and who will step up. Now, it's really hard. He said we need a guy to consistently step up. And that tells me they're not sure they have the guy yet. Like maybe they need to go out in the portal and find a guy. But what it also tells me is you have everyone still getting used to a system. And it's hard for that continuity or that chemistry to evolve when everyone's still, we're still trying to figure out how we play together on recess. This is a whole new school for everybody. We've all transferred to a new school, and now we're out at recess playing, and we're trying to figure out who can play dodgeball and
new playground
and who's going to fall off the monkey bars.
It's a hard adjusting the new playground, Scott.
Well, let's listen to a player who's been around a while, who is one of those hybrid players, and kind of what he's feeling about things. Landon King.
Brian, Kyle said that you've factored into the tight end room a ton this year. How are you feeling about going into this year?
I'm feeling good. I feel like, Meade, Allen, Hunter, I feel like that's a good three-core right there. We all bring something different to the table. And like you said, man, just out here competing, man, So.
The vibes last year were kind of tough in terms of just how the team, going through losing, stuff like that. What's the difference maybe coming into spring right now with this team?
Honestly, just having fun, We're not even really thinking about that. We already know what we did last year. We already know that we got that bad taste in our mouth. So right now, we're really just having fun, getting right with the new teammates, you feel me, and really just seeing like the new culture here at Utah, you feel me? So,
how do you feel your chemistry is building and developing with Devin Dampier?
I think it's great. Like I said before, Dev, he's probably doing one of the best jobs getting everybody, you feel me, like go out to eat, you know, go over to his house, just chill. So, you know, just easy stuff like that, it really goes a long way. So,
Landon, you could have easily transferred last year. What made you stick?
Utah. Can't leave, man. Come on now.
And what kind of role do you want to take this year? Obviously, you want the ball. You want to be able to be a factor in there. But do you have anything personal that you want to kind of fill in there?
I mean, obviously, you know, everybody wants to catch the ball, you know, score touchdowns. But honestly, like, I'm trying to get that Big 12 championship and get a chance in this playoffs. You know, like, this is my last year, you know, in college football. So really just taking advantage of this as, like, a team aspect of it. Like, I've never won a championship, like, in my football career. So, you know, being able to come out here, you know, and work towards that goal, you know, that's what's been keeping me going.
What did it mean to you to be selected to the Leadership Council?
Oh, man, like, that means a lot, you know, especially coming in as a transfer 2 years ago. That was one of my goals, you know. I mean, you see the Leadership Council every day, and so just seeing my face on the board, you feel me, it kind of makes me feel good, and like I said, it just motivates me, and just so I can put out a better image for, you know, the younger players and the other transfers that came in that were just like me.
When you transferred here, obviously it was Coach Ludwig's offense, and the tight end played a lot bigger role in the passing game. Coach Beck's offense, at least last year, wasn't as big a role. What's your feeling and the room's feeling about that?
Well, I mean, we got tight ends over here. You know, I don't know what they had in New Mexico, but, you know, we got tight ends over here. So, you know, the thing with Coach Beck's offense, like, the playmakers are going to make plays. Playmakers are going to get put in the spot. So if you're a playmaker, you know, you're going to get put in that spot. So.
Curious what your initial thoughts about Hunter Andrews are.
Oh, I love him in that tight end room. Look at him over there catching the ball. I ain't gonna lie, he's good. You know, he's kind of like the Brent Keithy. I don't want to say it, but I mean, I have to. He's like the Brent Keithy for real. I like him. He's fast. He can run. He runs like a 4.3. You know, he's about 6'3". So, you know, he's a good build, and I think he's a very good addition to our room. I'm glad he's in there.
How reinvigorating has this type of offense been for you?
What'd you say, my bad?
How reinvigorating has this type of offense been for you?
I mean, honestly, like, it's been kind of easy. Like, you know, coming from a pro-style offense and then now coming to just getting your cue and your assignment. I mean, it's kind of easy. Like, all you got to worry about is where to line up and what to do. You know, you don't have to worry about the look of the defense, if the quarterback's checking the plays, you know, stuff like that. So, you know, it's been a real offense to just be able to go out there and just play and just put your skill set out for everybody to see.
All right, there you have it, Landon King. Of course, he's been promoted or voted as to the Leadership Council, and obviously you can see why. Man, he's a fun guy. Love it, man. He's like, man, I'm here. I'm committed to Utah, and I appreciate that. And just got a really great personality. But you know, he brought up something I think is interesting. You wonder how much of an impact NIL has on stuff, right? Like, and he talked about Devin Dampier going. Yeah, I invite everybody over to my place. We go out to dinner. You know, we do all these things, and you can, right? Because these guys have more money than you and I put together.
They've got spending money now, Scott.
Yeah, this
college athletes.
This is not your
not just per diem.
Not your per diem anymore. So actually, I've heard some crazy stories about some of that stuff, which is wild. These players have a significant amount of money, and some of them are not making wise decisions, but. I believe Devin Dampier is, and I like the move. I like, you know, getting people involved, and I just, you know, man, I just get a good sense from Landon and just his whole idea about building this camaraderie with your team. So, be fun to watch and see where this team goes. And again, the thing that stands out to me is there's a lot of diversity on this team as far as skill sets and abilities, and you can plug a lot of people in a lot of different places.
And you got to think with Jason Beck, he joined the Sean O'Connell show and the Drive with Spence Checketts. Both times he talked about what Landon mentioned. His offense is based around getting the most out of the talent that you have on the roster. It's not necessarily, hey, these are the sets that I like to run, and if you don't factor into that, we're not going to use you very much. It's an offense that can be adjusted to the personnel that you have, and it was interesting to hear him say that even though at New Mexico their tight ends didn't have a ton of production, he doesn't seem very worried about it, and his fellow tight ends don't seem very very worried about that because they believe that we're the kind of key talents that can be utilized in this offense.
No question, and that is the thing, and I'm sure that's a lot of what Jason Beck is trying to figure out right now. So the plays they call, the things they do in practice, are like they're trying to figure out, what do I got? Like Jason Beck's not an idiot. He's like, I'm going to find my playmakers and I'm going to get them the ball, and that's a pretty may seem like a pretty elementary thing, but no, it's very smart, and I know a lot of coaches who have had a lot of success doing it the same way. All right, let's take a break, and we'll come back and wrap this baby up. Maybe we'll get a little crosstalk with our good friend Spence Checketts around the corner. Check out your bracket in the $1 Million Bracket Challenge. A perfect bracket wins you $1 million or $1 million bucks. Go to ESPN700sports.com and click on the $1 Million Bracket Challenge. Post at the top of the homepage to keep track of your picks. ESPN 792. 1 FM's $1 Million Bracket Challenge is brought to you by Budweiser, Clearwater Distilling, Overtime Cards and Collectibles. Love those guys. And Big Willie's. This is the Sean O'Connell Show here on ESPN 792.1 FM. All right, welcome back. It is the Sean O'Connell Show here on ESPN 792.1 FM, Utah's #1 sports talk. I'm Scott Mitchell, filling in for Sean O'Connell. I'll be here today, tomorrow, and Friday. So much fun today. Oh, my goodness, it's been a great show. Really enjoyed all the guests, all the back and forth, all of the talk that we've had. I've actually been educated. There were some things that came out today that were some nice little insights that kind of stuck in my head. So I appreciate being taught by all of you today, and hopefully you've enjoyed it as well. Hey, our final segment of the show is brought to you by Burt Brothers Spring into Savings. Get your car ready for the season with $69 tires, $50 off service tickets, and $79 alignments with purchases of 2 or more tires. Don't wait. These deals won't last. Stop by your nearest Burt Brothers today. Burt Brothers does it better. And I'll tell you who does it better, who just walked in the door, is a dog attached to Spence Checketts. Duke the dog. Love Duke. Oh, yeah, Duke is smelling my lunch. Anyways, Spence is coming up here in a minute, and I think we're going to do a little crosstalk today. I got some questions for old Spence. Ben Criddle on his show actually mentioned potential athletic directors at BYU.
Oh, first of all, are you nervous today due to crosstalk? Or are you good? Okay,
no.
All right. Last time you weirded me out.
Well,
I'm glad you're good.
I'm sorry you were weirded out by it. It was just like I was like, I didn't know what to say to Spence. I got a question for you in a minute, but
all right.
So I believe your dad's name was brought up
for the BYU AD
the
job.
BYU AD job. Is that something that would he ever consider?
So let me be clear about one thing, and you probably know this now that you're in this business.
Yes.
Your friends and family are very careful about what they tell you.
Oh.
When you when you crack a mic for 4 hours every day.
Right.
And so I will tell you that I have not spoken with him about this, and that's intentional. Here's my feel, though. He is, I don't think he'd mind me saying this, he's about to turn 70.
Okay.
He's working on a book. He is on the board of Burnley FC, a Premiership football club, a soccer club in England. I think he and my mother served a mission in London, and when they came home, I think he anticipated he was going to get back into a high-powered day-to-day position like he had the 35 years prior to him leaving on his mission.
Right.
And then, I've got 21 nieces and nephews. There are 21 grandchildren, and there's some out here in Salt Lake. Most of them are where they are in Connecticut or New York. And then I have a brother and sister-in-law in Indiana, and they have 6 kids. And I think he has found himself very much enjoying seeing the grandkids. He and my mom are going to Italy for his 70th birthday. And I can't speak to the BYU side of this at all.
Yeah.
I'm just not sure that my dad at this stage of his career would want to have that type of day-to-day pressure. I honestly don't know.
So it's a long-winded way of saying heck no, because you have to say heck no because it's BYU.
True.
Right. So heck no.
Scott, for frick's sakes, calm down. Yes. Now, look, I cannot speak for him. So if BYU wanted to reach out, my guess is he loves BYU. He loves Utah. He went to both schools. He does. He's one of those guys where he did his undergrad at the U, did his MBA at BYU. So he has allegiances. He loves Kyle. He loves Taylor Randall. He loves the U. Alex Jensen and Natalie, friends of the family. But he played basketball at BYU. He at the end of the day, I believe he bleeds BYU as opposed to Utah Red. That's my feel. So if I think it's President Shane Reese. If Shane Reese called my father, I'm sure he'd talk to him.
He'd have a conversation.
For sure. Yeah.
Okay, this happened to me yesterday.
Okay.
And I'm really curious if you've had something like this, or if you did, give me the name. So on my little show, The Down and Dirty.
Shout out.
Which is really fun.
Good.
I was interviewing Ronnie Lott. You know who he is.
Right? I heard that you were having I'm a massive Ronnie Lott fan. Those Niner teams were the first NFL teams I loved.
So when I played in the NFL, one of the cool things, I was a fanboy. I'm playing against Ronnie Lott. So he's playing for the New York Jets at the time. I'm with the Miami Dolphins. And I'm playing him in a game.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, I'm playing Ronnie Lott.
Did you ever think he might take my head off? He's going to kill me?
Oh, he's one of my favorite all time.
He's a bad boy.
And I went up to him after the game. I just said, I think you're one of the greatest ever played. It's actually been a privilege to have this experience.
That's
Really
cool.
Really cool.
Yeah.
And anyway, so I'm on the phone with him, and he goes, I gotta go. He goes, Marcus Allen's calling me right now. I says, well, put Marcus on the phone.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And he goes, no, I gotta go. He goes, I'm sorry, I gotta go. And he hung up. And so our interview got cut short.
Oh yeah.
And part of me was like, man, that's rude. How could you do that?
Yeah,
but then
yeah.
it was Marcus Allen. Like
Yeah.
I got big time by Marcus Allen
Yeah.
yesterday on the radio. So has that ever happened to you? Have you ever had someone who just abruptly goes, I got to go because I'm getting a call from?
Yes, that's happened to me on several occasions. I'm trying to think the last time that went down. It definitely happened with Jeff Van Gundy a couple of different times.
Yeah.
Because Jeff was so good to come on the show, and he always said, you don't have to go through ESPN, just text me.
Yeah.
And so I would honestly, like, if we had a gap in the show on a Monday morning, I would text Jeff and say, hey, can you come on in 90 minutes? And he'd say yes, but I've got a call, so in case I've got to hop off, just so you know.
Just so you know.
So that would happen pretty often.
Yeah.
I never knew who was on the other end. But recently, this was actually somewhat embarrassing. You know Ramona Shelbourne, the writer from ESPN?
Right.
She writes for ESPN.
Right,
she covers the NBA. And we booked her, and I got like 8 minutes. And then she's like, oh, got to go. Getting a call from a source, hung up. I'm like, thanks, Ramona Shelbourne. Like, so it happens from time to time. The higher profile guests you have, the more likely they're going to field a phone call. So if you're Ronnie Lott and Marcus Allen calls,
You take the call.
you might have to take the
You
call.
take the call.
Even though it means that you've destroyed the sanctity of the down and the dirty.
No, it was I was going to get down and dirty there for a minute.
By the
I
way,
was-
what's up with the name? How'd you land on the down and dirty?
For me, like when I played, everything was tight to the vest. I never gave an interview where and I just got old.
Mm.
And I just decided I'm just gonna give it down and dirty. I'm just gonna give it straight. I'm just gonna give it the way I want to do it. I'm gonna say what I want to say. I'm gonna talk to who I want to talk to.
Good for you.
And I'm just gonna give it to people. Just give you the down and dirty of my take on sports.
Okay.
That's where it came from.
Naming a radio show is undercover hard.
Yeah.
It's like people just think like, oh, you just come up with it. But no, it takes some time before you land on something.
It's so weird you said that because I'm like, okay, Spence Checketts going to come on the show, and the drive, right?
Yeah.
And the drive, like if you really think about it, it's like the drive, like because you're driving in your car.
It's drive
the
time.
Afternoon drive
Yeah,
time.
afternoon
It's all
drive
this
time.
stuff.
Yeah.
But it's also there's a drive that drives you to sports or to
Mhm.
whatever. But then there's also I hit a nice drive down the fairway because so there's
driving to the
like,
basket.
it's a
You're on the final drive
exactly.
for football.
It's
Yeah,
a-
it
it's-
works. But
No, it's
I
a
got
beautiful name.
But I got to say, it took me a while before I
Right.
landed on it. I
No.
workshopped a
Yeah.
bunch with friends and family. What do you
Yeah.
think of this? What do you think of that?
Yeah.
And the drive was the closest thing we got to a consensus.
I love it.
Yeah, so I appreciate it.
No, that was smart. All right, well, it's your turn. So I'm done.
Thanks
Unless
for
you
holding
have
the fort
anything.
down.
No, happy to do it. I'll be here the rest of the week, so really excited. Always fun to talk to you.
Good to see you, Scott.
Yeah, likewise. All right, this is the Sean O'Connell Show here on ESPN 792 FM. I'm Scott Mitchell. Thank you, everyone, for joining in today. And until then, we'll see you then. Spence Checketts, The Drive, is up next.